Today I am sharing over 25 of my best Christmas DIYs of all time. These are my favorite Christmas projects that I have created over the past 7 years here on YouTube, and I hope that you love them all as much as I do. For this first project, I will be using 5 of these 5-gallon paint stir sticks. These are the longer ones, and you can pick these up at Lowe's or Home Depot or even Walmart, and they're very inexpensive. I also picked up 2 of these holiday picks. These were at Walmart for 98 cents each. You can use any type of greenery that you'd like. And I'm going to be using about 3 feet of this black and white checked wired ribbon. The first thing I'm going to do is use my miter box and saw to cut off the ends of the stir sticks right where they start to curve in so that I just have straight sticks. After those are cut, I'm going to take some sandpaper and just smooth off those edges and anywhere else on those sticks where it might be a little bit rough. I'm going to use some antique wax by Waverly, and I'm going to water that down, and I'm basically making this like a stain. I just think this is so much easier to work with than stain. I think it's less messy, and I feel like I have a little bit more control over it, but if you want to use stain, you can do that. And so I am just painting my sticks, and then I'm going to use a paper towel, wipe off a little bit of the excess because I want the wood grain to show through. And I'm going to do this with all 5 sticks. Once these are completely dry, I am going to take them and give them all several coats of a clear sealer. I'm using a matte sealer to help seal the wood. Then once the sealer is all dry, I am going to arrange these in the shape of a star. So I'm going to just lay them out until I get my star shape just the way I want it. And because this is going to go outside, I am going to use wood glue to fasten these together, and I'm going to use some clips from Dollar Tree. And I will be using some hot glue just to help hold it in place while the wood glue dries. So as you can see, I'm just adding a little bit of wood glue and then also a little bit of hot glue, and then I'm going to use these little clamps from the Crafter's Square section at Dollar Tree and just clamp them down until they've had a chance to set up. Now that my star is all dry and secure, I'm going to add my greenery. I'm just going to use these, but you could use something that's a little more Christmassy, like some pine boughs, pine cones, berries, really just anything that you have on hand or is something for the style that you're going for. I'm wanting this to look a little bit more just wintry and not quite so Christmassy, so I decided to go with these. And I didn't do anything to these except spread the leaves out a little bit, and then I am going to use some floral wire from Dollar Tree and just use this to wrap around the stems and around the top of the star and twist it and tighten it so that it is secure. And since I want to put this outside, I don't want to use hot glue to keep the wire from sliding up toward the point of the star. So I am using just some craft sticks and some wood glue, and I'm going to glue those over the top. And again, I'm using a little bit of hot glue to help hold that in place while the wood glue dries. So while I'm working here on the back of the star, it's a perfect time to add the hanger. So I'm going to take some jute twine and tie a loop, and then I am going to glue it to the back using some wood glue and a little bit of hot glue. And now I'm going to add my ribbon to the top to finish this off. So I'm going to put the ribbon over the top of all of that I just glued on the back. This will kind of help make it look nice and neat on the back as well. Then I'll flip it over and I'm going to just tie a simple bow, nothing fancy, and just make it look neat. And then I'm going to secure it with a little bit of glue underneath, and then I'm also going to run some wire through it and kind of wire it to the sticks as well. I love how rustic and farmhouse this is. I did use some greenery that has a little bit of glitter on it, but I feel like I can get away with that for the holidays. For this next project, I will be using this tinsel tree from Dollar Tree, and I'm actually making a set of 2, so I picked up 2 of these. And I'm going to use some nautical rope. And then I'll be using more of that eucalyptus sprig that I got from Walmart. And I'll be using 2 of these red berry garlands from Dollar Tree. I'm going to start by removing the tinsel from the tree, and this is really easy. It's just looped around a little hook on the bottom, so you just find that end and then basically just unwind it. And I'm not going to throw the tinsel away. I'm going to save that and use it for something else. Next, I'm going to put a little bit of hot glue into the end of my rope and just twist that and hold it tight. This will keep it from coming apart and fraying. So now I'm going to glue the end of my rope to the top of the tree, and I'm going to do it a little bit at an angle. And then I'm going to wind my rope around the tree, and I'm going to leave about 2 inches or so in between each row of rope. There are little plastic knobs on this little cage or frame, and I thought about cutting them off, but I'm so glad that I didn't. You want to leave them on because they really help hold everything in place as you're winding it around. And when we're all done, you won't even ever see them. So then I secured the end of the rope at the bottom, and then I'm going to start pulling off some more of these sprigs of eucalyptus, and I am going to glue these in between the rope all the way around the tree. So once all the greenery is on, this is what it should look like. And now I'm going to add that berry garland, and I'm going to start at the bottom of the tree, and I'm going to go along the bottom of the eucalyptus that we just added, and I'm going to wind all the way up the tree, and then I'm going to attach it at the top of the tree with a little bit of hot glue to hold it in place, and then I'm going to wind all the way back down the tree, this time on the top side of the eucalyptus. And then I'll just secure that with a little bit of hot glue at the base, and all the berries are on. So now I'm going to take the ivory chalk paint, and I am going to very lightly brush all over this to give it like a little bit of a frosty look. And you'll see in a little bit that I actually ended up adding little pine cones to this later, and then I had to paint those again. So if you're going to add little pine cones, do it before you paint the white paint on, and it'll save you a step. These are little miniature pine cones that I picked up at Michael's. You can find them at Dollar Tree sometimes, but any of the craft stores or maybe even Walmart would have them. And like I said before, since I added the pine cones on after I'd already put the white paint on, then I had to go back and add a little bit of white paint to each of the pine cones. But I'm really glad I went back and added the pine cones. It was just the finishing touch that this little tree needed. So the first thing I like to put up is a place to display my Christmas cards. So let me show you how to make this really quick and easy DIY Christmas card holder. For this I will be using some full-size clothespins. I will be using 12. Then I'm also going to be using some wood letters. These I think I picked up at Walmart or maybe Hobby Lobby, but you can get them at Dollar Tree, as well as some twine, and this is from Dollar Tree. And you could use any kind of string or twine, just whatever you like. And then I'm going to be using some scraps of some small print Christmas scrapbook paper. I decided to put the words love, joy, and peace on my card holder, but you could do any words that you wanted to do. You could do Merry Christmas, you could do your family's name, Happy Holidays, whatever you like. Then I'm going to use some ivory chalk paint and paint my letters. And you could do this card holder in any style that you want to fit your decor. If you wanted to do a glam style, you could paint these in a metallic paint and use some more sparkly scrapbook papers. You could do this in more of a modern farmhouse. I'm doing a little bit more of a rustic farmhouse. So I'm going to also dry brush a little bit of dark brown paint on my letters to make them look a little bit aged. I'm using scrapbook papers that have small prints on them because we're using very small pieces, and I'm going to cut strips that are the width of the clothespins. I'm using 4 different patterns of paper, and I have 12 clothespins, so I'm going to be cutting just 1 strip of each paper, and I will get enough for 3 clothespins each, and that will be perfect for the pattern that I'm going to lay them out in. So then I'm going to cut my strips in the length of the clothespin, and like I said, I'm going to do 3 clothespins in each pattern of paper. And then I'm just going to use a regular glue stick, and I'm going to glue the scrapbook paper to the front of the clothespin. Once I have all the clothespins covered with the scrapbook paper, then I just lay out my letters on to the top of each clothespin, and I'm going to hot glue them on. So counting the letters and the spaces in my words, I have 14 characters. So the 7th one is the O, and that is the center. So I've taken a 6-foot long piece of twine and found the center, and that's where I'm placing the O, and I'm just hot gluing the twine to the back of that clothespin. Then I'm going to continue gluing my letters onto the twine, and I am putting 3 inches in between each letter of the same words, and then I am putting 6 inches in between each of the words. That way my words don't all run together. And this will also give you a little bit more spacing for room to hang your cards. Now that I have all of them glued onto the twine, I am going to take some red and green raffia that I had on hand. You can use ribbon or raffia or any other type of embellishment that you would like, but I'm just going to take this raffia and tie some bows and glue those to the twine in between each word and at each end. This is just going to finish it off and also kind of break up in between each of the words. And I'm going to tie a little loop at the end of the twine, and then I'm just making sure that the ends of my twine are the same length, kind of past the first and last clothespin, if that makes any sense. I just want to make sure that it's not kind of lopsided, so I made sure that I had the same amount of twine on each end. For the next project, I will be using this red paddle cutting board from Dollar Tree, as well as one of these chalkboard unfinished wood signs from the Crafter's Square aisle. I'll also be using one of these floral picks. I'll be using some of that red and black buffalo check ribbon with the snowflakes. And I'm going to be adding one of these little red truck ornaments. And all of these I picked up at Dollar Tree. First I'm going to remove the hanger from the chalkboard, and then I'm going to fill in the holes. I'm going to turn the chalkboard upside down onto my metal ruler, fill those holes with hot glue, and you want to press this down tightly against the ruler, and then once the glue is set, you pop that off and you have a nice flat filled hole that you can paint over. Next I'm going to paint the frame of my chalkboard using my ivory chalk paint. And I'm going to paint the edges of the chalkboard as well as the edge around the inside of the chalkboard, just to make it all nice and finished and neat. But you don't want to paint the back of this because we are going to be gluing it to that cutting board. Next, I am just freehanding the word Days Till Christmas on the frame. I put days at the top and then Till Christmas at the bottom, just using a pencil, and then I'm going to go over it using an acrylic paint marker. You could use a Sharpie, you could use stickers or decals, or make something from using your Cricut or Silhouette. Really, it's up to you. Now I'm going to take my little chalkboard and I'm going to use some E6000 and some hot glue and just glue that down to the little paddle cutting board. To embellish this, I'm going to place a couple of pieces of the greenery that I cut off of that pick, and I'm going to add a bow to the top made out of the buffalo check ribbon. And to make a bow, I am starting with a loop, and then I'm going to twist the ribbon because the snowflakes are only on one side of the ribbon, and so in order for it to have the right side out all the time, you have to do a lot of twisting when you're making these bows. So I make my loop and then I twist it, then I make another loop and then I twist it, and I continue this until I have 3 loops on each side. And then I'm going to make a loop in the center, and I'm going to twist it again, and that way the little tail of the bow will be the right side up as well. And then I'm going to take a little piece of wire and put that through the center and twist it real tight to hold it all together. I used the little wire hanger off of the little red truck ornament, and because why not recycle it? But you could use a pipe cleaner or floral wire or even a bread tie. Then I'm going to attach my bow with some hot glue just at the top of that greenery. And then I'm going to use these glitter snowflake stickers that I got at Dollar Tree. I'm going to use a couple of the smaller ones and just stick those in the greenery right underneath the bow. And to finish it off, I'm going to glue the little red truck ornament down toward the bottom of the sign. And now it's ready to count down the days till Christmas. I'm using a chalk writer from Dollar Tree. You can use regular chalk or chalk marker. I really like these. They are wet erasable, but they write really nice on the chalkboard. I think this turned out really cute. It's super easy to do. It goes together really quickly, and it would even make a great gift to give somebody.
Hi friends, I just wanted to hop on here real quick and say thank you for watching this video. If you are new to my channel, my name is Chantel and I love to do Dollar Tree DIYs and DIYs on a budget. I hope that you are enjoying this compilation of Christmas DIYs from the past. And this is just a sampling of what you'll find on my channel. So I'd love it if you would subscribe and stick around if you are enjoying what you are seeing. If you are a regular subscriber and you have come back to watch this video, thank you so much. It means a lot to me, and I know you may have seen some of these DIYs already, but hopefully you'll find some new inspiration that you haven't seen before. And so I just wanted to say thank you to all of you, and let's get back to some more DIYs.
I'm going to be using this little Easter sign from Dollar Tree. You can use any of the signs as long as they're kind of open in the back like this one is. I'll also be using a string of these little lights that have the leaves on them, also from Dollar Tree, as well as some of these berries. I picked these up at Christmas last year, but I've seen them during the fall season as well. And I'll be using a little bit of this black and white checked ribbon. I'm going to be painting mine with this Waverly chalk paint in the color ink. You can paint it any color that you would like. First, I'm going to remove the glitter detail on this sign. It's raised and it has glitter where it says Happy Easter, so I want to get this all nice and smooth. Then I'm going to give it a good coat of the black paint, and I only had to do one coat, so that was nice. I have to say I did feel a little bit bad covering up that cute little bunny's face though. And I did go ahead and paint the sides as well. If you are able to, I would highly recommend picking up one of these glass trivets from the kitchen section in Dollar Tree. They work great for hot glue guns. The hot glue just peels right off of these so easily. And right now I'm going to put it underneath my sign just as a little extra protection because I'm going to drill a hole, and just in case I go a little too far, I don't want to damage my craft desk. I'm measuring up 1.5 inches and just putting a mark, and then I'm going to measure over just halfway so I know right where the center point is, and then that's where I'm going to drill my hole. And I am using a 3/16 inch drill bit. So I have put the batteries in my little light strand and tested them out to make sure that they work. Then I'm going to thread them through the back of the sign, pulling them to the front until I get to the end of where the leaves are. Then I'm going to glue my battery pack inside the back of the sign, and I am making sure to leave the part that you open face up so that I can get into it and change the batteries. Next, I'm going to take my little light strand and start forming it into a wreath shape, just making a circle, and this is about the right size just to go around twice and make this little wreath. I used my Cricut machine and cut out this Merry Christmas lettering from Cricut Design Space, and I'm just getting an idea of where to place it. Now, if you don't have a Cricut machine, you could use stickers or another decal, maybe from Dollar Tree or another craft store, or you could even hand letter it using a paint marker or something like that. Once I got my lettering on, I decided I needed to make the wreath a little bit bigger, so I did end up taking it apart and making that just a little bit larger. And I did actually fold over the little light strand in one place to make it so that the lights didn't end up right on top of each other, so that they were spread out a little bit more evenly. To add a little bit of color, I'm going to take those red berries and just wind them around the wreath. And to hold my wreath in place, I'm going to add a little hot glue down by the hole at the bottom and then a little bit at the top of the wreath as well. And to finish this off, I'm going to make a bow just by looping my ribbon back and forth. Then I'm going to use a black pipe cleaner to tie through the center and twist the ribbon to hold it securely. And then I will hot glue that to the top, and this piece is done.
For this next project, I will be using an 11 by 14 inch canvas, but you can use any size canvas for this project. I'm also going to be using some sticks that I just gathered from my yard, some pieces of this pine greenery, and I think the more real that it looks, the better for this project. I will also be using some little pine cones. I think I got these at Michael's, but Dollar Tree usually carries them during the holiday season. And I will be using some red berries as well. To start off, I am going to remove the staples from the back of the canvas. I'm using this staple remover. It's one of my favorite little tools for things like this. It is linked in my favorite crafting tools down in the description box, but I use it all the time. I'm just going to loosen those staples and then I'm going to pull them out using some needle nose pliers. Once I have all the staples removed, I am going to remove the canvas off of the wooden frame, and I'm just going to set it aside because I won't be using it for this project. Next, I'm going to use some Rust-Oleum chalk paint in the color Linen White, and I am going to do a dry brush coat over this natural wood frame. I want the natural wood to show through, but I am going to do kind of a heavy dry brushing on this. I love these chip brushes from Dollar Tree for this. They work great for dry brushing, so just on my dry brush, I'm going to get some paint and then just brush over the wood so that the wood still shows through in some places. Once that coat of paint is dry, I am going to use some truffle colored chalk paint by Waverly. This is a dark brown, and I'm going to dry brush a lighter coat over the top of the white, and this is going to give it some more dimension and make it look a little bit more rustic. So now it's time to lay out my sticks, and I tried to pick ones that were fairly straight but still had some character to them. So I'm just going to start laying them out across my frame until I like the way they look. I'm wanting them to touch at the top and the bottom of the inside of the frame so that I can glue them at least at those points. Some of them I will be overlapping on the top or the sides of the frame, and a couple of the sticks were shorter and didn't reach the top of the frame, but I was able to overlap them over another stick that did span all the way, and then I could glue it to that other stick so that it had something to stabilize it. And some of them I needed to shorten. I just marked them with a marker, and then I used my little miter box and saw and trimmed them down to the right size. This saw is another one of my favorite crafting tools that's also linked below. I use it all the time. Then once I'm happy with the layout, I am going to use my hot glue gun, and I am going to neatly glue them at the top and the bottom, and like I said, anywhere they overlap each other, just put a little hot glue to keep it all together. Now I'm going to cut some small pieces off of my pine greenery, and I am going to just lay them out just randomly on my sticks to see how I like them. Once I have them laid out to where I like the way it looks, I'm going to glue them on with some hot glue. And now I'm basically going to do the same thing with my red berries. I'll just cut off some small pieces and place them, and once I'm happy with them, I will glue them down, and I will do the same thing with the little pine cones. Now I could leave this as is, but I am going to add some white chalk paint to the greenery and branches and the pine cones and the berries, just kind of randomly here and there, just to make it look like snow.
Alright, for my next project, I'm going to be using 3 packages of these wooden rulers from Dollar Tree. You could also use the paint stir sticks if you can't get the rulers. And I'm going to be using some of this thicker jute twine. This is from Walmart. I'm also going to be using some red vinyl and my Cricut machine, but you could use stickers from Dollar Tree or decals, or you could even use acrylic paint markers or even a black Sharpie. To start with, I'm going to peel off the little plastic measurement parts on the ruler. They just peel right off, and they are kind of sticky, so I like to just stick them on the packaging so that when I throw them in the garbage, they don't like stick to everything. And once I have those all removed, I'm just going to go over the rulers with a little bit of sandpaper just to get rid of some of that sticky residue that is left behind. So originally I thought I needed 6 rulers. Really, you only need 5. And I am going to cut the first one at 9.5 inches, the second one at 8 inches, then 6.5, 5, 3.5, and then I'm going to cut another piece on that same ruler that is 3 inches. And I will put those measurements in the description box below. I'm using my miter box and saw to cut these, and you do want to make sure when you measure these that the end you are cutting off and not using is the one that has the hole in it, because all of these rulers have a hole in one end. If you don't have a miter box and saw, I would highly recommend getting one. They are great for these little craft projects where you don't want to use a power tool, and I do have a link to all my favorite crafting tools in the description box below if you want to check that out. So as I said, originally I did cut 6 pieces for the tree part plus 1 for the trunk of the tree. I ended up only using 5 for the main part of the tree. So now I am just sanding the edges to make sure there are no splinters or rough parts. And then I'm going to give all the pieces a coat of this chalk paint, just in an off-white color. This one is called Chiffon Cream. It is by Rust-Oleum, and I picked it up at Walmart. Once those have dried, I'm going to take some antique wax by Waverly, and I'm going to use this chip brush from Dollar Tree and just dry brush over each of the pieces and give them more of a distressed or aged look. If you are new to crafting or you're not familiar with dry brushing, it just means you get a very little bit of paint on a dry brush and you lightly rub it over your project, and it leaves little streaks or lines on the project, and usually on the edges and where any raised parts are, and it just gives it that kind of antique or aged look. If you've watched my videos for any amount of time, you know that I love my dry brushing. It really is one of those techniques that just is so easy to do, and it takes your projects kind of to the next level and really gives them that farmhouse look. So it was when I cut out my words on my Cricut machine that I realized I had one too many rulers, so I've taken one of those out. So as you can see here, I have 5 rulers for the main part of my tree, and then I have my little tree trunk. So I'm just going to get those positioned where I want them and apply them to the rulers. Once I have the lettering all on, I'm going to space these out kind of where I want them. Then I'm going to take my twine and I'm just kind of rough eyeball measure how long I need the twine. So I'm going to start at the bottom corner and go all the way up to the top, and then I will be adding some at the top for a hanger and then back down the other side. Then I'm going to add about 10 more inches just to make sure that I have plenty of twine, and then I'll just cut that off. Then I'm going to fold my twine exactly in half, and then I'm going to tie a knot to form a hanger at the top. To make this next part a little bit easier, I am going to use some painter's tape and tape down that loop at the top to my table so that it will stay put. Then I'm going to lay the pieces of my tree across the top of the twine. As you can see, I'm just kind of roughly positioning them where I think they'll go, and then I am going to tape down the ends of my twine to the table as well. This is just going to make gluing the wood pieces to the twine so much easier. I used some craft sticks as spacers in between each of the pieces of my tree. This just helped me make the spaces more uniform and help them not to be uneven. Then I am carefully adding a little bit of hot glue to the top of each piece of twine and gluing each piece of wood on. Next, I'm going to take a small piece of twine and I'm going to glue one end to the trunk of my tree, and this is on the back side of that ruler, and then I'm going to just loop it around and glue the other end on the other side. And once the glue is set, it's okay to trim off those extra ends at the bottom, and then I'm just gluing that tree trunk right in the center below the word Christmas. I am using this little package of Christmas embellishments from Dollar Tree, and they actually have been carrying these like this summer. So check your craft sections for these, and they were with like the florals and stuff. So I'm just picking out a few things that I think go together well, and I'm going to add those to the top of the tree. And I actually really like how this looks on the top of the tree, better than any of those star options.
is a budget-friendly, easy Dollar Tree DIY for indoor use for some decor pieces that you can use either lighted or not lighted.
For the large present, I will be using 2 packages of these 12-inch wood craft dowels from Dollar Tree. And I will also be making a smaller present using the 6-inch dowels, and for that you will only need 1 package of these. I will be using some of the Deco Mesh from Dollar Tree, and I will need 2 rolls for the large present and 1 roll for the small. I'm also going to be using some decorative ribbon. The wire-edged wider ribbon works really good for this. And for each present, I will be using a string of these 20 mini lights. And to assemble it, I will just be using my hot glue gun and some Gorilla Glue sticks. For the first step, I am going to be gluing 4 of the 12-inch dowels into a square. And so I am just going to put a little bit of glue on the end of one of the dowels and glue it to the end of another one in a 90-degree angle. Then I'm going to repeat this with the other dowels to form a square. Once that is finished, I'm going to take another dowel and I am going to glue it in the corner standing straight up, again forming a right angle. This does require a little bit of patience because you have to hold on to it until the glue sets up. Then I'm going to repeat this in all 4 corners. Once that glue is set, I am going back in and just adding a little bit of extra hot glue on those seams just to make sure that those dowels that are standing straight up are nice and sturdy. Next, I'm adding dowels to the top. I'm going to be making a square on the top as well, and I'm making sure that I am gluing these the same way that I glued the bottom dowels because you want to make sure that the one dowel is in between the other dowels just like they are on the bottom so that your box is square. And once again, I'm going to reinforce those corners with a little extra hot glue just to make sure it's good and strong. On the larger present, I am going to insert several dowels in the center of these sections just to help reinforce it, just to make sure that it's good and strong and it's going to stay square. And you will be able to see these dowels, so you do kind of want to make sure they're kind of centered and straight just to help it look nice when it's finished. For mine, I added a dowel to each of the squares on the sides on the top, but I did not add one to the bottom. Totally could, but I just thought it might be easier for finishing my project if the bottom was open. So now I'm going to take some red craft paint, and this can just be any kind of paint that you have, and I am going to paint the dowels because I am using a red deco mesh and I want the dowels to blend in a little bit more. So whatever color of deco mesh that you're using, I would recommend painting the dowels that same color. So next I'm going to take my deco mesh and I'm hot gluing it along the bottom edge, and then I'm just going to wrap it around up one side, across the top, and down the other side. And the width of these rolls of deco mesh is perfect for half of the size of this present, and so it works out really good. And when you're doing this, you just want to make sure that you are pulling the deco mesh tight as you are gluing it so that it's nice and flat and you have a nice smooth finish. And again, this does take a little bit of patience because you have to hold it there until the glue sets up enough that it stays in place. Once I have that going up the one side, across the top, and down the other side, and then I have it glued down and secured, then I will just trim off the deco mesh, and then I will start on the other half of that side of the present. So I'm going to continue this on all four sides of the present. So when I have all four sides done, I'm actually going to have a double layer that's going across the top. One is going one direction and the other layer is going another direction, and that's totally fine. It looks great when it's done. I wanted it to be a double layer so that the box or the present wasn't quite as transparent. So once the sides are done with the one layer, then I'm going to take the deco mesh and I am going to wrap it around the present in a horizontal direction so that I have now two layers going around the present on all four sides. And again, I will have the deco mesh going one direction for the first layer and the opposite direction for the second layer. And now I'm going to do the second layer of deco mesh around what will be the bottom on the sides of the present. Now that my box is covered with the deco mesh, I'm going to make a ribbon using that wired ribbon, and really you need two rolls of the ribbon for the larger present. I only had one, and so I'll show you what I did with that just using one roll. But I'm making a bow here, and because this is not double-sided ribbon, the pattern is only on one side, I'm having to twist it in the center each time so that I have the right side facing out. I'm making 3 loops on each side and then 1 loop in the center, and then I'm taking a piece of floral wire and tying that off. Then I'm going to set my bow aside for a minute, and I'm going to take the remaining ribbon and I'm going to go up one side of the present across the top and down the other side, right in the center where those supporting dowels are. Now if I had had another roll of ribbon, I would do this on all 4 sides, but since I did not have enough of the same pattern of ribbon, for now I'm just going up one side across the top and down the other side. But I am planning to pick up another roll of this ribbon so that I can put this on all 4 sides. Next I'm going to take my bow that I made and I'm going to poke those wire ends from the floral wire down through the center, through the ribbon, through the mesh, and I'm going to put one wire on each side of that dowel that's going across the middle, and then I'm just going to twist it in the center to attach that bow to the top of the present. Then I'm going to take my string of lights and I'm going to attach the end of the string to that floral wire that is attached to the bow, so in the center of the top, and this is just going to help hold the lights up so that they're kind of spaced more evenly inside the present. I'm also going to use a little bit of floral wire to attach it in a couple of different places to the dowels, just to hold the lights in place so that they're just not all falling or hanging in a straight line or in a heap. I like these lights because you can plug them in and they're not battery operated, and you can plug several sets together. So I also made a present out of the smaller 6-inch dowels, and it only takes 10 dowels for this, and there's 12 in a package of these shorter ones, so it only takes one package. So I've made my cube or square already, and I'm using white deco mesh for this one, so I am going to paint these dowels white. And you'll notice with this one, I didn't put the dowels in the centers of the squares. It's small enough that it's pretty sturdy, and I didn't feel like it needed that extra reinforcement. So now I'm basically going to do the same thing with this present as I did with the larger one. I'm going to add the deco mesh to it, and I am going to do a double layer on this one as well. So here's what it should look like after you have both layers of the deco mesh on it. As you can see, I have one going one way, one going another way, and it kind of makes a crisscross pattern on it. So now I'm going to use some of this mesh ribbon that I also got at Dollar Tree. I liked this one to go with this white package, and I thought it complemented the other red present that I made as well. So I am going to actually put this on all 4 sides, since I have plenty of ribbon to do this on the smaller present. Then I created a bow to put on the top of this one as well. I'm attaching it with floral ribbon. You could use like a pipe cleaner for this as well, or even like a bread twisty tie would probably work. And then I'm attaching the lights in the top of this one, and since it's smaller, I only attached it to the top. And here's what it looks like, and I think it's pretty even when it's not lit up, but it's really pretty when it's lit up as well. I picked up 4 of the little plastic Christmas Village houses from Dollar Tree, and I tried to get all different styles. Honestly, these are the only 4 that they had in stock at my Dollar Tree, and so these are the ones I picked. I also grabbed 4 of the unfinished wood chunky ornaments from the Crafter's Square aisle. If you don't have these available, you can use any block of wood. I also grabbed 4 bags of the clear glass beads or marbles. Either one will work. And I picked up some hooks from Walmart. This is a 6-pack of coat hooks, and I believe it was about $7 for this package. I'll be using some white spray paint, and I chose this one because it says it bonds to plastic, and I think this will work great on those houses. I'm also going to be using some black chalk paint, and I'm going to use some E6000 as well as my hot glue gun with some Gorilla Glue sticks. First, I am going to spray paint my houses with the white spray paint, and I am doing several light coats. It actually took me 3 to 4 coats of paint to cover all the color and to get in all of the little grooves and everything on the buildings. So This takes a little bit of time because you want to let your paint dry in between each coat. So while I'm waiting for my paint to dry in between each coat of paint, I'm going to prep the bases. And so I'm going to remove the hanger off of those ornaments, and I am going to cut one side of these to be flat since they're kind of scalloped. I need one edge to be straight so that I can attach the hook for my stocking. And I lucked out because these barely fit inside my miter box, and so I was able to push them down into the miter box and use this to cut them. If you have a different way to cut these, then by all means use what's easiest for you, but this did work for me, and so I'm just going to cut all of the bases to have this one straight side. Then I'm going to take a piece of sandpaper and I'm rounding off the corners where I just sawed off that edge just to make them a little more of a softer edge, and then I'm sanding any rough edges and just getting it all smooth and ready to paint. Next I'm going to fill the holes, and I am using hot glue, and a trick I use is to set the hole on a metal surface like a metal ruler, and then I'm filling the hole with the hot glue, and I just hold that down tight until the glue sets. Then when I pull that off of the ruler, I have a nice smooth surface, and the glue hasn't seeped out anywhere or made a rough surface. So that is a trick that I use, and you can use wood filler if you'd like to fill the hole with that, but I find this to be a pretty easy way to do it. Then I'm going to paint my bases, all the front, the back, the sides, all with my black chalk paint. And a tip here, when you're painting raw wood, if you would spray it with a matte finish sealer before you paint, it will actually be easier to paint. Usually you only have to use one coat. It just seals the wood and the paint doesn't soak into the wood as badly. So that's just a tip. I did that with these, only had to paint one coat on, and it went on really well because I had sprayed that matte sealer onto the wood first. So my houses are all painted and the paint is dry, and I think it was pretty much 4 coats of paint that I had to use. And one thing I did not notice until after I had painted them white is that this one is crooked. The base of it is not down all the way, and it's not something that I can fix. It's just the way it was made. So the house sits a little bit crooked. I probably will go get a replacement if I can find one, but something to watch out for. So now I'm using just an old paintbrush, and I'm going to dry brush some of the black chalk paint on some areas of the houses. I'm going to hit all of the corners and the edges and a few of the raised areas and just some various places on the roofs, just to give them a little bit more of an aged look. And this will also break up the white and bring out the details of each building. So now that everything is painted, I'm going to take those clear glass marbles and beads, and I'm going to fill up the houses with these. And it's really easy because there's already a hole in the bottom where you would put like a tea light, like LED tea light, but I'm just going to fill these up, and I chose the clear because I didn't want any type of color showing through the windows of the houses. So I'm going to fill these up, and this is going to give the stocking holders some weight so that when you hang a stocking on there, hopefully they will stay up on the mantle and not fall down. And I found that as I put these in, if I kept shaking it and shaking them down, I could get a lot more in. So the more you can get in, the more weight this will have. Then I just used a little wooden box to set mine in while I was working on it so that the marbles wouldn't all roll out. I'm going to take a piece of cardboard and cut it just big enough to glue over the hole to help hold those in, and So I'm going to use a little bit of E6000 and hot glue just to glue this in place. And I apologize, I think my tripod got bumped and I didn't realize that my picture wasn't in the center of the frame, so I'm really sorry about that. Then I'm going to glue the house to the center of the wooden base, and I've just marked where the center is on that base. And you want to make sure that the front of your house is facing that flat edge that we cut off, because that's where the hook is going to go. And some of the houses may overlap the edge of the base a little bit, and that's totally fine. It's not really going to make a difference. The last step is to add the hooks to the bases, and so I just using these hooks, like I said, I picked them up at Walmart for $7 for this package, and there's 6 hooks in here, and these are perfect for this project. And so I am going to drill some holes, pre-drill this before I screw the hooks on, just because I don't want to split the wood, so I would recommend doing that. Now, I did want to give you an alternative way to make these. If you can't find these things at your Dollar Tree, Walmart carries these flat stocking holders. They come in different colors: gold, galvanized, bronze, silver, and they're already weighted. And then they also have these little ceramic houses for $1.97 each, and they are the same size as the ones from Dollar Tree. So you could totally paint these houses or leave them the way that they are. They have the hole in the bottom, but you don't need to add extra weight because that hook, that stocking holder, is already weighted. So it could save you time, and the cost is about the same. And they had a fairly good selection of houses. These are some that I picked up, but they did have more than this. So here are my finished stocking holders, and guys, I love these. I am so pleased with how these turned out. It cost me about $20 for a set of 4, and I know there were only 3 here, but I didn't want to make that one with the crooked house, so I will be replacing that one. But $20 for a set of 4, way better than $100+. So I'm really happy with these. For this project, you will need a container for the base, and you can use a planter from the Dollar Tree or some type of bucket like this galvanized one with the twine around the top. You also need a package of the floral foam. I got the one with 2 round pieces in it just because those will fit really nice in the bucket I'll be using. And you'll want to pick up a Dollar Tree plunger because we're going to use the handle from that. Also some Spanish moss. And I picked up 2 bags of these stones that I'm going to be using in the base to help weight it down to make it more stable. You'll also want some type of embellishments. I'm going to be using some type of Christmas floral stems from Dollar Tree. You also need some craft paint to paint the post, and I'm using white, and then I'm going to use a little bit of black as well, and a paintbrush. And then of course a mailbox. This is the largest size mailbox. They did have them in, I believe, 3 different sizes. I picked up the largest size, and they had them in various patterns. I liked this little snowman pattern. You also need some of these pine garland ties. They come in a package of 12 at Dollar Tree. a hot glue gun and glue sticks. Then you'll need a box cutter or razor knife. And I had the idea last minute to use these fairy LED lights, but that's totally optional. The first step is to unscrew the handle from the plunger and just set the handle aside, and we'll get to it in a minute. But then we're going to take the plunger and the razor knife, and in that circle, just follow the circle around in the center of the plunger on the bottom side and just cut around that circle. Just be really careful and just go around it a couple of times, and it cuts pretty easily, so just be careful as you do it and cut out that center part. Once you have the center part cut out, just throw away the other part, and we need to make sure that the bottom is flat. Mine had a little piece of rubber sticking up, and so I just wanted to get that cut off so that the bottom was flat. And so I just took the razor knife and just carefully trimmed around the little part that was sticking up and made the bottom flat. And now we can just insert the handle back into the rubber part, and it just screws right back on, and just screw it on tightly. Most likely the handle will have a sticker on it, and so just go ahead and remove the sticker. Mine was a little challenging to get off, but I did get it off, and then I just took a piece of sandpaper to remove any leftover adhesive that was on the handle. And if you feel any rough spots on the handle, just go ahead and sand that as well. Next, we're going to paint the handle, and I'm going to first paint it with the white paint. And you'll want to paint that rubber end as well. Just don't paint the very bottom, the part that we wanted to make sure was flat, because that's what we're going to glue to the bottom of the mailbox. Once the white paint is dry, I'm going to take just a little bit of the black paint, just put a dot on my plate there, and then I'm going to dip my paintbrush in just a teeny bit of the black paint and mix it in with some of the white paint to make kind of a gray. And then I'm just going to brush a little bit here and there up and down the pole, just to give it a little bit more of a weathered look and just give it a little bit more dimension. Once you like the look of your post, just set it aside to dry completely, and then while it's drying, we will work on the base of our mailbox. The first thing is to put the floral foam into the container, and since I'm using the round pieces of floral foam, I don't need to cut them to size, but if you have the blocks, you'll just want to cut it so they fit down inside your container. And then I'm going to add some hot glue to the bottom of my container and glue the first foam to the bottom of the container. And then I will just add some more hot glue on top of that piece of foam and add this second piece of foam, just because I want a thicker piece of foam to push my pole down into. I didn't get my foam quite centered, so I decided to go ahead and measure where the center was on my foam. So I'm just measuring across the diameter and marking the center in the foam, and then I'm just going to turn my bucket and do it the opposite direction as well, so that I know right where the center is, because I want my pole to be centered in the bucket. Then I just marked the center with a pen, and then I'm taking the end of a tool that's round and just pushing it down, kind of just making like a guide hole, because I don't want the foam to break when I push the handle into it. So I just did that to kind of help it go in easier. So let me just add here that I put the stones in, and then I decided that I wanted my pole to be a little sturdier. So I took the stones back out and added some glue into the hole and on the pole, And then also after I put the pole back in the hole, then I added a bunch of hot glue all around the pole just to make it sturdier. And this made a really big difference, so I would highly suggest doing this. Another option someone mentioned is to just fill your container with plaster of Paris or Quikrete to hold your pole in place, which would work really well. Now that the pole is in place, you can add the stones all around your foam and the pole to help stabilize it. And I liked these stones from Dollar Tree because they were flat, most of them. There were some really thin ones, and so they slid down in between the foam and the side of the bucket really easily, and I was able to really stabilize that using those rocks. Next, I'm going to find the center of the bottom of the mailbox. So I'm just going to measure both directions and find the center and mark that so that I know right where I want to glue the mailbox onto the pole. Then I'm just going to add some hot glue right to that center, a fairly generous amount, and we're just going to glue that right onto that flat rubber piece that we have on the end of the pole. Now it's time to add the embellishments, and I'm going to first start out with adding some Spanish moss to the bottom. And I had first used both bags of the stones, but I decided with the Spanish moss that it was too many stones and the Spanish moss didn't really sit down inside the bucket like I wanted it to. So I ended up taking out the second bag of stones. So really I only used one bag of stones, and then I added Spanish moss on top of those. I'm going to take a couple of the garland ties and just twist the ends together to make it a little bit longer. And for this one I only needed two because this pole is a little bit shorter than the Christmas lamppost. And I'm just winding it around the pole and securing it at the top and the bottom. Then I wanted to add some color down at the bottom, and I had this clip with the glittery poinsettia, and I decided, because there was poinsettias on the little mailbox, to kind of go with that theme. And so I'm using this on the bottom. It has a little glitter poinsettia and a little present and a little gold accent along with the pine, and I just thought that was really pretty, and so I'm going to use that on the bottom. I decided I also wanted to add some florals to the mailbox itself, and so I'm going to take two more of the pine ties and fold them in half. Then I'm going to take them and I'm going to turn one upside down so that I have the folded end of one pointing up and the folded end of the other pointing down. And then I'm just going to twist them together in the middle and then spread them apart on the ends that are separate. And so I have kind of three ends on each side. Then I like to just kind of lay things out and see how it looks before I start gluing it all together. So I'm just going to play with it. You can just use whatever florals or embellishments that you like, and I decided to continue with the poinsettia theme here, and I'm using a gold glittery poinsettia on the mailbox part with some red glittery accents. So I'm going for a little bit more of a glitzy look on this mailbox. I decided that I wanted my floral embellishment on the side where the flag was, but I didn't want to glue it so that the flag would not go down, because when I store this I want to be able to put that flag down so it doesn't get all bent up, because it's just made out of like thick paper. So I'm just going to glue my embellishment on just below where the flag is attached, being careful not to get any glue on that so that it will still fold down. The last thing I decided to add was my little fairy lights, and I just tucked the little battery pack kind of underneath the Spanish moss and then just wound the little fairy lights into the greenery at the bottom, up the pole, and in the greenery on the mailbox. And I just think it adds a really festive look to this mailbox.
I am going to be showing you how to DIY this snowman advent calendar.
My original snowman was made from a piece of a 4x8 beam, and since I didn't have that available and it would be really expensive to buy right now, I picked up a 1x8 piece of lumber from Home Depot. We cut 3 pieces that were 9 inches long from this board. If you don't have a way to cut these yourself, you can ask Home Depot to cut the pieces and they will do that for you. We also took the third piece of wood and cut it down to 2-inch strips. I will show you those in a minute, and I will put the measurements for the pieces that you need in the description box below. Here are the pieces, and this is the front and the back. Since a 1x8 is not actually 8 inches wide, it's like 7 1/4. They are 7 1/4 by 9 inches. And then these are the 2 side pieces. These are 2 inches wide by 9 inches tall. For the brim piece of the snowman's hat, I picked up this piece of wood from Dollar Tree. It is 5 1/2 inches wide by 11 inches tall, and it is about 3/8 of an inch thick. I just found this in the Crafter's Square aisle. If you can't find it at Dollar Tree, you can pick up something similar at Home Depot or Lowe's. I will also be using these wood planks from Crafter's Square. They come 6 in a package. I will be using 3 of them for my snowman. These are the 7.1 by 2.8 inch size. I picked up these wooden stars at Hobby Lobby. They are 1 inch and there are 10 per package for $2.99, and I did get them for 40% off. And I picked up these little linoleum nails. They are 11/16 in size, but I liked the finish of these and I got those at Home Depot. I will be using this chiffon cream chalk paint to paint my snowman. I will also be using this ink or black colored chalk paint for his hat, as well as some craft paint just in a kind of mauve color or pink, and then orange and black, and then also some metallic gold. I'm going to start by sanding down all of my wood pieces and making sure that they are nice and smooth and have no sharp edges or splinters. Next, I'm going to paint only one side of one of the bigger pieces using the chiffon cream chalk paint. And I'll show you here in a little bit why we're only doing one side of one of these for now. Once the paint on the front of my snowman is dry, I am going to figure out where the nails need to go. I want to make sure they are spaced evenly, so I will be measuring and marking them out. So I have figured out that the top row of nails needs to be 5 1/4 inches up from the bottom. So I'm going to mark that on both sides. Then from that 5 1/4 mark, I am going to measure in 1 1/8 increments down and mark the other 4 rows where my nails will go, and I'll mark those on both sides. Then using those marks as a guide across the snowman, I'm going to place my ruler across so that it lines up with both of those marks on the edges. And then I am going to put a mark at 7/8 inch from the left side, one at 2¼ inches from the left side, another at 3 5/8 inches, and then 5 inches, and then 6 3/8 inches. Those are all measurements from the left side. So I know that sounds like a lot of strange numbers, but that's how it works out so that it looks nice and neat and even. And then I'm going to repeat marking those same measurements on the 4 rows below that. And to make this easier for you, I am going to make a diagram with all of the measurements on it, and I will put the link to that in the description box so that you will have that quick reference guide. Next, I'm going to paint on my snowman's face. This is going to be easier to do before I actually put the nails in the front here. So I am sketching a little simple snowman face. This face will be on that reference sheet that I have in the description box below. And so if you need to use that, but I'm just kind of freehanding a cute little face, and then I am going to paint it. I'm going to start with my pink color, and I'm going to use a little round stippling brush. And if you don't have a brush like this, you can use a little piece of paper towel. You can use a different kind of brush. You can use a sponge and just maybe practice on a piece of paper or something until you get the look that you want. But I am just going to use this. And the trick to making these little cheeks on this snowman is to use very little paint and make sure that your brush or whatever you're using is dry. And you can always add more paint. So start light and work up. Next, I'm going to use my black acrylic paint, and I'm going to use a smaller brush, and I'm going to paint on his eyes. Now, if you're not comfortable painting these eyes, then you could certainly use a Sharpie marker just to draw and fill them in. And you could also use the Sharpie marker on the little dots that are going to make his little coal mouth. And actually, if you have an orange Sharpie, you could use that to do the nose. So this can be very easy. I just like the looks of paint. I like to paint, and so I just decided to paint my snowman's face. Now I'm going to take the end of a paintbrush. You could also use a stylus, and I am going to just dip it in the paint and make dots for his mouth. And this is going to be like the pieces of coal. I usually start with a little bit of paint and then add more if I want those dots to be bigger. Now I'm going to use the orange acrylic paint, and I'm going to paint his little carrot nose. If you are a regular subscriber, thank you so much for coming back. And if you are new to my channel, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I want to let you know that I do a lot of budget DIYs and Dollar Tree DIYs. Not all of my projects are as detailed or involved as this one. I do have a good variety of easy, quicker projects as well as some more detailed ones. So be sure you're subscribed and set your notifications so that you don't miss out on any of them. So now I'm just using a really tiny little brush and adding some little white dots in the corners of his eyes. These just really help him come to life and give him a little personality. I did also decide to use my little brush and add a few little lines with the black paint on the carrot nose, as well as a little bit of black at the bottom of the carrot to give it some shadows. And then I took some white paint and added that to the top side of the nose to make it look like there was just a little bit of snow on his nose. I really love adding these little details. I think it just makes it so cute and takes it to the next level. So now it's time to add the nails. And the nice thing is there are enough nails in this package that you can make several of these snowman countdowns if you want. And there's enough wood in that piece of lumber to make a second one as well. So I'm just going to hammer in these nails about halfway in, and I'm making sure that the thickness is right so that the stars will hang from the nails. So they'll slip over the head and still have enough room to hang. And so then I'm just going to tap in all of my nails. And the reason I'm doing this before we assemble the snowman is because I didn't want to glue all of his body together and then be pounding on it, because I thought that that might be counterproductive and cause it to kind of break apart the glue of gluing his body together. So that's why we're doing all of this first, and in a minute we're going to start assembling our little snowman. So now that I have the front of my snowman all done, all the nails are in, now it's time to glue his body together. I'm going to take the other larger piece of wood that is unfinished, and I am going to take my two side pieces, and I'm just going to run some wood glue up on the edge of each side of the back of the snowman, and then I'm going to place those sides on top. I'm going to use some clamps to hold these together. If you don't have any clamps, you can just set something heavy on top. Just make sure that your wood pieces stay aligned. And then I'm going to let this dry for a couple of hours. I will put the link to these clamps in my description box under my favorite crafting tools, because they are definitely some of my favorite crafting tools. They're super easy to use because you can put them on using just one hand, and I love that about them. So it's been a couple of hours and the glue is pretty much set up. It will continue to dry, but it's good enough so that I can keep working on my project now. So now I'm going to add some more wood glue to those side pieces, and then I'm going to place the front of my snowman right down on top of that. Make sure everything is lined up, and then I'm going to put my clamps on this and let it dry thoroughly. And you do want to be careful when you put your clamps on not to crank it down too hard. You don't want to make indentations or marks on your project, but this is just to kind of secure it together so that the glue can set up. While that's drying, I am going to take the wood piece that I got from Dollar Tree, the one that's like 5.5 by 11, and I am going to cut off 2 inches off of the length so that it is now 5.5 by 9. Then I'm going to take my 3 wood planks, 2 I'm going to leave just as they are, and then the third one I am going to cut 2 pieces that are 3¼ inches long from this one piece. These are going to be the side pieces for my snowman's hat. Then I'm going to give all of these pieces a quick sanding to make sure that they are nice and smooth. And I'll use a damp paper towel just to get off any of that sawdust. To put together the snowman's hat, I am going to start by putting the 2 side pieces on top of the one long piece. So I'm going to use some wood glue, and for this, because this wood is really light, I am going to also add a little bit of hot glue so that it holds it in place right away and I can keep working with this. And now I'll add a little bit of wood glue to the top of those sides and a little bit of hot glue as well. And then I'll just put that other wood plank right on top of that. So I'm basically just forming a box that's going to be the top of the snowman's hat. On the 5.5 by 9 inch piece of wood that we're going to use for the brim of the hat, I'm going to measure 1 inch in from every side and then just draw a line all the way around, and this is going to give me a guide for the placement of the top of the hat. And then I will just put some wood glue all around the bottom of that box and glue that down to that brim piece. Then I'm going to put some heavy books on this and let it dry completely. And I am making sure that I get any excess glue wiped off so that I don't have any drips that are dried on my finished project. Once the body of my snowman is completely dry, then I am going to take some wood filler, and anywhere there are any little gaps or anything where I glued the pieces of wood together, I'm going to put a little bit of wood filler in there, and then I will let that dry and sand it down so I have a nice smooth surface to paint. So now it's time to paint the rest of the snowman. So I'm going to use that same chalk paint that I used for the front of the snowman and just paint the sides and the back. I'm not going to worry about the inside because that is not going to show. And so just a nice coat on the sides and the back to finish off the body. For the hat, I am using Waverly chalk paint in the color ink. It's just a black chalk paint. You could use a black acrylic paint as well. And I painted the inside of his hat, and then I'm going to paint all of the outside except for the bottom. On the bottom, I just painted a strip around the edges, the part that was going to show, so that when I glue the hat on, I'm gluing raw wood to raw wood using the wood glue. I thought that would give it a stronger hold. So that's why I'm painting it this way, because that center part of the hat on the bottom is not going to show anyway. When that black paint is dry, I am taking a chip brush or just kind of a really bristly brush and dry brushing some of the white paint on the hat just to give it some dimension and make it look a little bit old and worn. And I just think this added a lot to the hat instead of just having it a plain black. Then I'm going to use my wood glue and a little bit of hot glue and glue the hat to the top of the snowman. And I was pretty generous with the wood glue. I just made sure that I cleaned up any drips or any that was kind of squeezing out. But I wanted this to make sure that it was stuck on and wasn't going to come off. And I did set some heavy books on this and set it aside to dry. Okay, now it's time to make our stars for the countdown. So I have 25 wooden stars that are 1 inch, and I need to drill some holes in them so they can hang on the nails. And this is a little tricky because you have to do it very carefully so that you don't break the stars. So I first put down my little cutting mat and a little piece of scrap wood, and then I used a smaller drill bit than I actually needed. I used a 1/8 inch drill bit to drill my first hole in the star, and then I used the actual size that I needed, which was a 9/64 inch bit, to make my hole a little bit bigger. And this worked really well because when I tried to use the bigger bit first, it would crack the star or break it. So by using the smaller bit and then the larger bit, I was able to get my holes drilled without breaking the stars. And I'm drilling my holes up toward the top point of the star because I need to have room to put my numbers on the stars. And then I just checked to make sure that they were going to fit okay. So now I need to paint them, and I am going to be using this metallic gold acrylic paint. You can pick this up at Walmart or any craft store. You could paint these using a paintbrush, but we need to paint the front and the back and the sides, and so let me show you a little hack that makes painting small things like this so much easier. I am just going to take a zippered sandwich bag and put half of my stars in there, and then I am going to drip about 3 to 4 drops of paint in there. Um, you can use a little more or less, but I think less is a little bit better because if you get too much, then it gets really globby. So I just zip that up and then I just squish them all around to make sure the stars get all covered and then dump them out on my paper towel. Then I will use a paintbrush to just smooth out any places where there might be excess or any missed places. And I did use a heat tool to kind of dry this top side so that I could flip them over and they wouldn't stick to the paper towel, and that worked really well. Then I'm going to take the rest of my stars and just repeat this process. Once the paint on the stars was dry, I did pick them up and look at the sides of the stars because there were a few places on the stars that the paint didn't get on. So I just made sure everything was covered, just touched them up a little bit, and this only took a few minutes. Now that all the paint is completely dry, I am going to write my numbers on the stars using a black Sharpie marker. And I could have painted the numbers on, but even I didn't want to go to that length. So the black Sharpie marker works great for this. And while I didn't do this on mine, I think I'm going to go back and do it, but I would put the number on both sides of the star so that when you're looking for the star in the bag to put it on and you're looking for a specific number, you can find it more easily. And now that everything is completely dry, I am going to spray my stars and my snowman with this matte clear sealer because I want to protect the face of the snowman and I want to make sure that those numbers stay on the stars. So it's just going to protect my whole project. Well, our snowman is looking pretty cute, but he definitely needs some embellishment. So I am going to use this buffalo check wired ribbon as a scarf. You could use any type of Christmas fabric or ribbon that you want to use for a scarf for him. I just tied a knot on the side and trimmed it off, and then I did add a little bit of glue here and there just to hold it in place. I just used my hot glue gun just to secure it. Now I'm going to take a floral pick and I am going to embellish his hat. So I'm going to just cut this one apart and use some pieces from it. I'm not going to use the whole thing. I'm going to arrange them on his hat and then just hot glue them down. And for the very last step, I am going to take my white acrylic paint and I am going to add a little bit here and there just around the brim of his hat and on the very top of his hat just to look like he has a little bit of snow. So when I went to put my stars on my little nails, I noticed that they didn't want to go on very well, and that was because some of the paint had gotten in the hole when I painted the stars. So I just took my drill bit and ran it through the hole really quickly, and then they fit back on the nails just fine. So here he is all finished, this cute snowman Christmas countdown. And I love how the stars just store in the top of his hat, I just put a little organza bag in there and we keep the stars in there. And he's just so much fun. What a cute way to count down to Christmas. So currently my ornaments are in 3 large totes, and I am going to combine them into just this one single tote using these 24 compartment drawer organizers that I picked up at Walmart. These come in a 2-pack for just $4.87. So the package said that each of these are 12 by 12 inches, so I did verify that, and I'm going to cut a piece of foam core board 12 inches by 24 inches, and I actually did make it just a tad bit longer, about 24 1/4 inches, just to give me a little extra wiggle room. And I will be cutting 2 pieces of foam core board this size, the 12 by 24 1/4, so that I can make 2 trays using these 24 compartment drawer organizers. So before I start gluing these down to the foam board, I'm just making sure that they are going to fit like I had planned. And this is perfect. And so I'm using some Gorilla Glue sticks in my hot glue gun. And I'm going to be pretty generous with the glue and just glue this down all the way around, making sure that I hold the drawer organizer straight, because the sides want to bend in because they're foldable. So I just hold them straight until the glue sets up. Then I'm going to add the second drawer organizer in the exact same way, and I will add also a little hot glue in between the two, along the sides on the top edge, just to make sure that they are stuck together well and that everything is secure. So now I have a tray that I can store 48 ornaments in, and I decided to add some little jute twine handles to my trays. I did just hot glue these on because the trays aren't that heavy. You could actually punch through the cardboard in the organizers and tie your twine to the sides if you're worried about the twine handles coming off by just gluing them, but I felt like they were pretty secure. So I'm going to take out my ornaments out of the boxes and start putting them in the dividers. And I did have some that had some little notes that came with them that I did want to keep, so I just put those in the little compartment with the ornament. And just with this very few amount of ornaments, look how much packaging I was able to get rid of. I think this is amazing. And I've just gotten started. Okay, I know what you're thinking. You're wondering, what about those larger size ornaments? Well, I do have a solution for those as well. The material that these drawer organizers is made out of is very easy to cut with a pair of scissors, and so you can cut out sections from the inside of the organizer and make larger compartments. This was so easy and it worked great. And this does not have to be done before you glue them to your foam board. So if you glue them down and later on you decide you want to make more larger compartments, you can certainly do that. So I made 2 trays using these drawer organizers, and now I'm going to make a third tray using this set of drawer organizers. This I also got at Walmart. It was $6.87, I believe. There are 6 trays, and these are a little bit shorter and they're individual, but this actually worked perfect for my tote because I was not able to do 3 trays of the other drawer organizers because it was too tall. So doing 2 trays of those and this tray of the shorter organizers is perfect and it fits in my tote exactly. These trays had little cardboard flaps that you were supposed to push down into the bottom, but they didn't really want to stay very well, so I just added a little bit of hot glue and secured them down so that they would stay put. The dimensions of these, once I laid them out on the foam core board, was still 12 inches, but I did have to add a couple of inches to the length to be able to fit all of them on, but that still fit inside my tote, and so my foam board was 12 by 26 inches for this one. And then I just used my hot glue and glued these to the foam board just like I did the others. By using these larger drawer organizers, this gives plenty of room for some of those odd sized ornaments or miscellaneous things that you might have. And so I think this is a great addition to my organizing tote. And I will be adding the jute twine handles to this tray as well. So here are 2 of my totes completely empty. The third tote has boxes from ornaments that are actually my daughter's, and I didn't want to get rid of her things, so those will wait and let her decide on. But I took all of these ornaments out of the packaging and put them in my organizing trays, and look at all of these boxes and packages that I can get rid of. I did find some things that I could donate, so I can get rid of those because I don't use them anymore. And I did have a few larger items that need to be stored in a different place. But look at all of my ornaments in these trays. I got so many ornaments in here, and I still have room for more. I'm so excited about this. I should have done this years ago. Now I can see all of my ornaments. I can lift the trays out and it's just so much easier to access them. It will be faster to decorate the tree and faster to put the ornaments away after Christmas. And so I am super thrilled with this. So the total cost for everything, including the tote, was $26. I did get my tote last year after Christmas at Costco. These are the best totes. It was $5.99 on sale. I can guarantee they are going to cost more this year because unfortunately everything costs more this year. But this is still a very budget-friendly option for storing all of your Christmas ornaments. I do want to mention that when you are making this, depending on the tote that you are using, it is best if your trays go all the way up to the top so that your lid goes on and covers that top tray right across the top. And this is going to keep things from moving around. So even if the tote is tipped, things are going to stay in place. If your trays don't go quite all the way to the top and there is a little bit of room in there, this would be a perfect place to store your tree skirt or even maybe a Christmas throw that you're going to store and just put out at the same time you'll be putting out your Christmas items. So just something to keep in mind because you want your ornaments to be all secure and not rattle around if the tote should get tipped. And you can see that I did have some room on the side of my trays, and I think that that is actually beneficial because I did have some larger things that I could store in there as well, and it just keeps everything nice and tight in the box, and I can store so much in this. For this, you'll need a window lid tin from Dollar Tree, and you can also get these at Walmart, and I think I've seen them at Michael's.
I also am going to use a sleigh ornament again. I just really like these little sleigh ornaments from Dollar Tree. And also some of the little trees that they had in a 2-pack, and they come in white or green. You'll need some type of filler for the bottom. I'm going to be using this shimmering filler that I got last year at Hobby Lobby. Or you could use the faux snow, but that might be a little messy for this project. So maybe something like fiber fill would work well for this too. I'm also using one of these LED white lights from Dollar Tree, and a package of these glitter snowflake stickers. First, you'll want to remove the lid from your tin, and we're going to need to cut a hole in the back side of the tin using the razor knife. You could probably also use a drill for this and just drill through the back side. We just need a hole for the lights to go through. So you just want to very carefully poke through the tin, and I'm just going to cut out a little square in the back of the tin. Then I'm going to take some painter's tape. You could use probably duct tape or masking tape, just something that you can cut little strips of and put through the hole and tape over the sharp edges so that that you don't get cut, or so that it doesn't cut the wires for your lights as well. Next, I'm going to take some acrylic paint, and this is in a midnight blue color, and I'm just going to paint the bottom of the inside of the tin. And I chose this color because I wanted it to look kind of like a dark night. While that first coat of paint is drying, I'm going to get my little sleigh ready, and I wanted to just do a red and white. So I'm going to remove the little decoration that's on the sleigh for now. And I'm going to use these little red packages that I took off of some Christmas picks that I got from Dollar Tree. And since I want to do white and red and silver, I'm exchanging the gold bow that was on there with a silver string that I had, just to make it all kind of coordinate better. Once the first coat of paint is dry, I'm going to go in over the top of that with a second coat, and I'm using a little bit of a lighter color. I decided that that first color was just a little bit too dark. I'm leaving a little bit of streaking on this second coat so that the darker paint shows through a little bit, just to give it a little more dimension. So then I'm going to let that paint dry all of the way. And then I decided I wanted to give it a little bit of sparkle, so I had this glitter spray that I had gotten a long time ago that I decided to spray a little bit on there. That step is totally optional, and you don't need to do that if you don't want to, or if you don't have that on hand. Now we're going to put the lights on, and we're going to glue the little battery pack to the bottom of the back side of the tin. And you want to make sure that you have the side that opens facing out so that you'll be able to change the batteries when you need to. So I'm just going to add some hot glue to the other side of it and stick it directly to the tin. And then you'll just need to thread the lights, the string of lights, through that hole that we cut into the inside of the tin so that we can attach those. Once you have the light string pulled all the way through the hole in the tin, then we're just going to bring it up to the top edge of the tin and start gluing it around the edge. And I just put a little dab of glue
and stick the wire in it, and I'm gluing where the lights are. That seemed to be the easiest place to glue that string of lights, and it doesn't seem to affect the way the lights look or work. Once you've gone around the inside of the tin once, you're going to want to take your wire and just make a little fold in it so that your second round of lights will be offset from the first one, so that you don't have two lights in the same place, and this will make the lighting more even in your tin. So now it's time to assemble the scene inside of our little tin, and I've chosen a white tree, and then of course my little sled that I got ready, and then I've decided I'm going to use the filler that I got at Hobby Lobby last year, and so I'm just going to pull out and decide how much of that I want to use, and before I actually put that in the tin, I'll want to glue my tree inside the tin. Then I can place my filler inside the tin and kind of wrap it around the base of the tree. Then I'm going to glue my packages inside of the little sleigh, since I didn't do that before. And then I'll put the sleigh inside the tin and just secure it with a little glue as well, so it doesn't slide around inside there. Then I'm going to take several of my little snowflake glittered stickers from Dollar Tree and just stick them on the back of the tin. And there is a little bit of a trick that I like to use just to make it look a little more interesting, and that is to cut one of the snowflakes in half, and then I'll just use that half and place it right up against the top of the tin, and that way it just looks a little more complete, I think. So I decided I wanted to cover up those two little holes that were showing in the sleigh where I removed the original embellishment, and I wanted to stick with the white and red theme, so I just made a little white bow out of a scrap of ribbon, and then just added a few little berries that I had as well, just to finish that off. I decided after the fact that I wanted to put a ribbon or a bow on the top of this Christmas diorama, so I'm just making a bow out of some white ribbon that I had, and I couldn't wait to see what it looked like with the light on. So here I have the little lights on inside, and it looks so cute. But I'm just going to wrap the white ribbon around the outside of the tin one time and just glue it with my hot glue gun just at the top to secure it. Then I'm just going to add my bow at the very top, and then it will be finished.
For my new lamppost, I'm going to be using this 5.5 by 7.5 inch piece of wood from Dollar Tree. And I also picked up a smaller piece of wood that is 5.5 by 5.5 inches, and it's a little bit thinner. I'm also going to be using some pieces of Velcro. I picked these hook and loop fasteners up in the hardware aisle. And I'm going to be using a small piece of a scrap of a paint stir stick. I would recommend using about a 1-inch dowel for your post. You can pick these up at Walmart for several dollars. I happened to be at Home Depot and saw this stair baluster, and I decided to upgrade mine a little bit. It was a little bit more expensive, but I think it's going to be worth it. I'm going to use some black chalk paint to paint my post and my base. And I'm going to use just some wood glue from Dollar Tree and a couple of longer screws that we just had around the house. Of course, I'll need a screw gun to screw those in. And I'm going to be using this pre-made lantern that I picked up for $5 at Family Dollar. I can't DIY this for this price, so you should be able to get one similar to this at Dollar Tree Plus or at Family Dollar. I'm going to start by sanding my wood pieces and removing the labels from them. If you have stubborn labels that don't want to come off, just use a heat tool or even a blow dryer to loosen that adhesive. And if you have any sticky residue, just run your sandpaper over the top of that, and that should take care of it. I'm now going to find the center point of my wood pieces. I'm just going to do this by drawing a line diagonally across the blocks both directions, and then where they intersect is the center. I'm going to use a little old cutting board that I have just to protect my work surface, and then I'm going to drill a hole in that center point in both pieces of wood using a drill bit that's just a little bit smaller than the screws that I will be using. Now that I have those drilled, I'm going to go ahead and paint both pieces of my wood with my black chalk paint. The larger piece of wood I am going to paint on all sides, but the smaller piece of wood I'm going to paint all sides except for just a square in the center of one of the sides. And you'll see why I'm doing that here in just a moment. Next, I'm going to cut my stair baluster or my post down because this is taller than I want it to be. And since the one end is longer, that square end is longer than the other, I'm just going to measure the shorter end, and then I'm going to cut down the longer end to match. This made my post about 29 inches long. Once I have that cut, I'm going to just sand off any rough edges. On the end that I just cut, I am going to draw my diagonal lines to find the center of my post because I need to drill a little hole in this so that my screw will go in without splitting the post. There's already a hole on the one side of this baluster, but if you have a dowel that doesn't have holes in it, you're going to want to drill a hole in the center of each end of your dowel as well. And then I'm going to give my post a coat of black paint. I decided to use a little bit of this chiffon cream chalk paint. It's just an off-white color. And then a dry brush from Dollar Tree. Any dry paintbrush will work. And then I'm going to just dry brush over this because I wanted to bring out the details of the baluster. I felt like some of those got lost a little bit with it just being painted a solid black. And so I wanted the turned part of this to really show. And so by dry brushing a little bit of paint, it highlights those edges and it also kind of gives it a little bit of a snowy look. And since I dry brushed on the post, I went back and added a little bit of dry brushing to both pieces of wood that I painted black as well. Now I'm going to attach my post to my base, and I'm going to first put a little bit of wood glue on that bottom of the post, and then I'm going to put my screw through the base. This is the larger piece of wood, and then I'm going to just line that up with the hole in the post and screw that in tightly. This was a little hard to hold on to, so my hubby did help me with this, and you can do it by yourself, but having an extra set of hands is always helpful. Once the base is on, then we're going to add the smaller piece of wood to the other end. And now that the post is on the base, it's much easier to drill that little hole where we marked the end of the post. So I'm just drilling that right now. And then I'm going to go ahead and screw on my smaller piece onto the top, and I'm going to do this with that side that has the unpainted square in the center facing up. So now I need a way to attach my lantern to the post that we just made. So I am going to actually add a little spacer on top of the little door that the batteries go inside of, and this is going to help me attach this. So I just cut a piece of this 5-gallon paint stir stick, and this is a perfect width, and I just cut it basically the length of that little door. And then I'm going to use some weld bond, or you can use E6000, some sort of strong glue. I would not recommend using hot glue for this, but I'm going to use this weld bond, and then I am going to add a little bit of hot glue just to hold it on while that other glue is setting up. But this is going to give this a really strong bond so that it won't come off. And just a tip here, make sure that you don't get your glue inside the little battery compartment. You don't want to glue the little door shut so that you aren't able to change your batteries. And once you have this glued on, you do want to let the glue set completely before you go on to the next step of putting the Velcro on this, because you don't want the Velcro pulling your piece of wood off. You want this glue to be completely dry. I let my glue dry overnight, so I know it's completely set and this is not going to come off. The reason I had to put this spacer in is because that battery compartment, or the bottom of the lantern, is indented. It's not flat, and so I needed a way to attach it to my post. So I'm going to be using these Velcro pieces, and 2 of these from Dollar Tree fit perfectly on here. So I'm going to place 2 of the same type, of the same side of the Velcro on this, and then I am going to place the other side of the Velcro pieces so that they'll attach. I'm going to put those on the lamppost where we didn't paint, and this is why I didn't paint this. I wanted it to stick directly down onto the wood. And since I don't want to worry about which direction I need to position the lantern on here when I put it on the base, I'm going to use 4 squares of the Velcro so that there's a bigger surface on here, so no matter which way I set it on here, it's going to have plenty of surface to stick to. And it was perfect that the bottom of the lantern was exactly 5.5 inches square, which is exactly what this piece of wood that I picked up at Dollar Tree was for the base. So it just worked out perfectly. The Velcro is sticking really well to both the bottom of the lantern and the wood base, the top of my post. And so it's just working out really well. So the lantern that I picked up at Family Dollar already had that greenery on the top of it. So I just went into my stash and picked out some picks from Dollar Tree that I already had, and found ones that I thought would go well with what was already on the lantern. And I'm removing a few of the elements from them that I don't want to use, but then I'm going to combine these 2 picks to create a floral piece on the bottom of my lamppost. I decided that I wanted to add a few extra little pine cones and berries to this, so I just dug through my stash and found some to add to it. But you can use any kinds of embellishments that you want or have on hand. It's just really up to you. Then I'm just going to attach all of my greenery and berries and pine cones and everything just using my hot glue gun. So you may remember in my original video, I said I thought putting some fake snow on the lantern would be a good idea. And so I decided to go ahead and just take some white craft paint and just add a little bit of snow in little patches all along the lantern. And I think this just really gives it that winter Christmas look and gives it a little more uh, depth and dimension. And I also added a little bit to the pine cones and greenery that are on it as well, because if it were outside and it were snowing, snow would get on that as well. And since I added the snow to the lantern, I'm also going to add a little bit to the greenery and the pine cones and the berries that I added to the bottom of the lamppost just to tie it all together. Since the ribbon on the top of the lantern was just a plain red, I kind of wanted to keep with that. And I found this ribbon at Walmart. It was, I think, like $2.68 for this roll. And it's not quite the same color, but I'm okay with that. It doesn't have to be like matchy-matchy. I love using wired ribbon for this, and so I'm just going to loop my ribbon back and forth, and I'm going to make 4 loops on each side with one in the center to finish it off. And since I always forget to get something to tie my bow off with, I put a clamp on it, and then I am going to use some wire and just wrap that around the bow tightly and secure that. And then I will just fluff out those loops on my bow to give it a nice full look. Then I'm going to leave some fairly long tails on my bow because I want them to hang down on the lamppost. I did leave the wire that I tied the bow off with long enough that I could use it to tie the bow onto the lamppost, but you could also just attach the bow using some hot glue. And here it is, the Christmas lamppost 2.0. This version was so much easier to make, and I think it looks so much better. I loved how easy it was to make using this lantern from Family Dollar. And if you don't know, Family Dollar and Dollar Tree are owned by the same company, so a lot of the Dollar Tree Plus items you can find at Family Dollar. And that lantern just was a total game changer. It really made this an easy project. And since I had to make it removable to be able to turn the light off and on and change the batteries, then you can also remove it and use it like in a centerpiece like I have here. And so it just makes it really versatile. And I love how it looks on my table here, but I also love it as a lamp post. Also, if you are interested in how I made this little riser for the center of my table, I will leave that video linked here in the card above and in the description box below. This project is inspired by this picture I found on Facebook of what looks to be a live pine snowflake wreath, and I'm going to recreate it using 6 of the Dollar Tree Christmas trees. To embellish my wreath, I'm going to be using some pine cones as well as some red berries. I'm going to use some zip ties from Dollar Tree, and I'll be using some wide wired ribbon. This is some that I picked up at Walmart. You can also get some great deals at Hobby Lobby, or I even picked this up at Costco last year. And of course, you can always get wired ribbon at Dollar Tree as well. I'm going to take all my trees out of the boxes and remove the little plastic ends off of those because I won't be using those stands, although I am going to keep them because I'm trying to figure out a DIY to do with them. If you've made something with those stands from the Christmas trees, let me know. I'd love to hear about it. I'm going to take two of the trees and place them together with the bottoms facing each other like you see here. Then I'm going to take three zip ties and just zip tie those together as tightly as possible. I'm using some wire cutters to trim off the ends of those zip ties, and then I'm going to repeat this two more times so that I have three bundles of the Christmas trees. Next, I'm going to position my bundles in the shape of my snowflakes. I'm going to make kind of an X shape and then put the third one across the top. Then I'm going to use zip ties to secure these all together as tightly as possible. There will still be a little bit of movement in these, and that's fine. We're going to take care of that in a little bit, but you just want to get those zip ties as tight as possible and then trim off the ends. Now I'm going to fluff out all of my Christmas trees to start filling out this wreath. Some of the tops of my trees were a little bit long, so I just folded them over. You could also trim them off with the wire cutters if you prefer. If you need a budget-friendly idea for a gift for a crafter or for something to put on your wish list, this little crafting vacuum is the best. I'll put the link in the description box below. Next, I'm going to take my ribbon and I'm going to make a bow that is going to go in the center of my snowflake. So I'm just measuring about how big I want those loops to be, and then I'm going to loop my ribbon back and forth. Now, this ribbon is only patterned on one side, so I'm twisting it every time before I make another loop. And I'm just going to loop it back and forth until I have as many loops as I want, and then I'll tie that off using some floral wire. Then I'm going to fluff up my bow, and this is why you want to use wired ribbon because it's so much easier to shape your bow and have it hold the shape, and it just looks so much nicer. I decided that I didn't want any long ribbon tails hanging down from my bow, so I trimmed those off, and then I'm just going to use those long wires on the back of the bow that I use to hold the bow together, and I'll just push that through the center and tie it off on the back side of my wreath. So I have a tendency to get ahead of myself when I craft, and I should have done this next step before putting my bow on, but I didn't. So I would recommend maybe you do it. But I'm going to take some chalk paint, just some white paint, acrylic craft paint will work, and I'm going to lightly brush all over my greenery to give it kind of a little bit of a flocked look. And so if the bow isn't there, then you don't have to worry about getting paint on your bow. But, I made it work. Once that white paint is dry, I'm going to place some pine cones randomly in my wreath. And then I'm also going to add some of the red berries. I just cut my stem of berries apart and just took one stem, but it adds a lot of color and I think this looks really pretty. I'm going to flip my wreath over, and because I don't want these to be moving around quite as much, I'm going to just put a bunch of hot glue all around and let that set up, and that's going to really make this sturdy. And then I'm going to take a couple of the branches from one of the trees and just make a loop so that I can hang it. And here's what it looks like on my front door. And I think it is really pretty. I like that it's a little bit different than just your traditional wreath.
For this next project, I will be using this large plastic ornament. Now this is one of the flat ones. It's not a round ball. And I did pick this one up at Michael's, but I have seen similar ones at Dollar Tree. I'm also going to be using this little wall decor piece, as well as one of these wooden candlesticks. These I did pick up at Hobby Lobby, and these are 1 7/8 by 1 3/4. I'll also be using a string of LED battery-powered lights from Dollar Tree. Either one of these styles will work, but I think the thinner strand wire will work better. I will be painting my ornament using this Rust-Oleum frosted glass spray paint. This I got at Walmart or maybe Michael's, I'm not sure. And I will be using some various craft paints, green, white, and then some metallic gold and silver. These I just had on hand and picked up at various places. I'm going to start by removing the top of the ornament and then spray painting it with the frosted glass paint. I took a piece of floral foam and stuck a dowel in it. This way I can put my ornament over the top and spray it easily on both sides. And I find that I have to do multiple light coats of this to get the frosted look that I like. So I would just let it dry between coats, and while it was drying, I would work on other things like this. So I turned my little wall decor piece over and put my battery pack inside of there, and then I'm marking where that is. I'm going to cut it so that it's just like a 1/4 of an inch larger than that battery pack. And I'm just using my miter box and saw for this. And then I am going to take the end off of the longer piece and I'm going to attach it to the smaller piece. So I'm basically just making a small little box for my battery pack to fit in. And it's real easy to break this apart, and then I just used a razor knife to cut off that end that I'm wanting to use. And then I cleaned it up a little bit. I used some wire cutters to kind of snip off some of the chunks of glue that were still attached to it. And then I am going to sand it and trim it a little bit just to get it to fit nicely on the end. And I did have to kind of bevel the edges of the little box that I cut using the razor knife so it would fit as nicely as possible. And it's not perfect, but I think it still works. And I just used a little bit of hot glue to attach that end. Next, I painted my box black, and I'm actually going to show you what I did first because you're going to see it throughout the remainder of this project, but I do end up changing it at the end. So I took my little box that I painted black, and then I took some white paint and an old brush and just kind of pounced a little paint on here. I'm just kind of trying to make a little bit of a, I don't know, speckled look to this just to give it a little more interest. And I also did the same thing and added a little bit of silver paint to that too. Then I took my little wooden candlestick and I painted it with the black paint. Now that my ornament has the frosted look that I like, and honestly, I put probably 6 or 7 coats of paint on this, but it's got a nice frosty look, and we're going to do some painting, and I am going to just encourage you to try this. It's not hard, even if you think you don't have painting skills, and you can practice this on just a piece of paper or just something that you don't really care about, and then go ahead and do it on your ornament. So for this, we are going to be using a flat paintbrush, and you want it to not be a round brush, but a flat one, because we are going to paint some trees. If I were Bob Ross, I would say we're going to paint some happy little trees. And this is very similar to the way Bob Ross does it, but it's just a really easy technique. So give it a try. So I am using some white and some silver paint, and I'm just kind of mixing them a little bit together on my brush. And then I am going to keep my brush, the flat part, I'm just going to keep it horizontal. And I'm going to start at the top of the tree, and I'm going to and I'm going to work down, and you'll be able to see how I am making the tree branches, but it's just going back and forth and just kind of dabbing little lines. And then I am going to continue to make my tree wider as I go down. And then at the top of the tree, I do turn my brush vertical so that I can just make the little skinny top of the tree. But for the rest of it, I'm going to keep my brush horizontal and just dab back and forth. And the secret here is to not have too much paint on your paintbrush. You can always add a little more, but if you get too much, it's really hard to get that look that you want. It just kind of all blobs together. So less is more. I'm also going to take the white and the silver and just along the very bottom of the ornament, which is actually the top of the ornament, because you can see here that I have the ornament upside down because I want that hole facing down. And so along right above where that opening in the ornament is, I just painted some snow along the bottom. And I'm going to do this white and silver tree on both sides of the ornament, and I made them about the same size on each side, and I did add a little bit of extra silver once I had my tree, just to kind of help bring that out and add a little bit of more sparkle to it. Next, we're going to take some metallic gold paint and just a liner paintbrush, and we're going to make some just stick trees basically. So like trees in the winter that have lost their leaves. And I started out with this liner brush that was a little larger, and I didn't like how it was looking, so I actually switched to a smaller liner brush. And if your paint is not uh, drawing lines very well, if you add just a little bit of water to it, just a little bit to thin it out, then it will draw lines better. So I just switched to that smaller brush, and then I'm just making a couple of lines, of vertical lines, and then adding some branches off of the main tree trunk. And that's all. So I know some of you are still thinking, I can't do this, but please give it a try. You might be surprised. And if you decide you can't do it, then you can use something that you cut out on a Cricut machine or some sort of decal or rub on transfers on this. So it's not limited to just painting. So now I'm going to use the same technique that I used on those white trees for a green tree in the center. It's kind of like uh, the showcase of this project is this nice pretty green tree. So I mixed some lighter and darker green paint, and I'm I'm not mixing it thoroughly because I want the different colors to show. But I'm just putting a little bit of each on my brush, and then I'm using that same technique to do this green tree. And I'm making this tree a little larger, and so it is covering up a little bit of those gold trees and a little bit of the white trees on the bottom. And then I'm just going to add some various colors wherever I think it needs it, as far as the darker or lighter green. And then once that is dry, then I'm going to add a little bit of white just to make it look like it has snow on the branches. And I just love how elegant this looks and how easy it really is to do. Now we're going to assemble our little base for this, and so I'm marking where the center of my box is so that I know where to drill a hole. And I'm just using a drill bit that is big enough so that I can thread my lights through that. And then I'm also going to drill a hole through the candlestick so that I'll be able to put the lights through that as well. So now I'm going to go ahead and thread my wire lights through that hole in the bottom of my base, and then also up through that little candlestick. And as you can see, my little battery pack fits in there, and it has a little extra room for the extra wire. And then my lights are going to go up through the candlestick, and I'm going to glue that candlestick to my base. And then I'm going to thread my lights into my ornament. Then once I have the whole strand of lights threaded into my ornament, I'm going to glue it to the top of that little candlestick. Isn't this so pretty? The camera doesn't even do it justice. It just is very elegant looking. But I do need to cover up that part of the ornament where the top of the ornament was, because it has threads on it. So I'm going to just use some ribbon, and I had this fuzzy white ribbon that I got on clearance after Christmas last year at Michael's, but you could use any type of ribbon that you want to cover this up. So I'm just going to glue a little strip around that area of the ornament and kind of cover up that seam where it attaches to the candlestick. And then I'm going to tie just a regular little bow and glue that on as well. Well, I decided I wasn't loving the black base, and so I decided to paint the candlestick white, and then I decided to paint the base white. I wanted it to just have a softer, snowier look, and so I just put a couple of coats of white paint. You know, sometimes you end up changing things up from your original plan, and that's okay. Let me know in the comments which way you liked it, or if you would have done it a completely different way. Once my white paint was dry, I did decide to add some sparkle glaze to the base of this. This is something you can pick up at craft stores for sure, and maybe even Walmart. I don't remember where I got this. It's just a clear glaze that has glitter in it, and it's great for doing projects like that are snowy, or that you just want to add a little bit of sparkle to.
I will be using this house shelf to make a really cute winter decor piece. So I'm going to also be using these two tree ornaments that I picked up at Dollar Tree, and these come in a 2-pack for $1. I'm going to start off by using some midnight blue acrylic craft paint, and I am going to paint the front of my house shelf with this paint. And actually, I paint the sides and the back too, just to give it a nice finished look. But I don't paint the shelf part. I'm going to leave that white. So as you can see, it's going to take a couple coats of paint to cover up the design on this. So I'm using my heat gun to dry this coat of paint because I'm very impatient. And you just want to be careful not to get the heat gun too close to this, because it will cause it to bubble up if you do. And then I'm going to add a second coat of paint once that's completely dry. The The top of the shelf has a really nice white finish on it. I'm just going to leave that alone, and I'm going to take some white paint and just go around the edges of it. And the only white paint that I had was this paint from Dollar Tree. It works okay, but it's not my favorite. It does take several coats to cover, where I think a chalk paint or something would probably have only needed to do one or maybe two coats. I think I had to do 4 coats with this. Next, I'm going to take an old stiff toothbrush and I'm going to dip it in the white paint, and then I'm going to just use my thumb to flick the bristles so that it splatters white paint onto the blue, and this is going to make it look like snow. I love this technique. It's super fun. If you haven't tried it before, you might want to practice before you do it on your project, but once you get the hang of it, it's really easy to do. Next, I'm going to take my tree ornaments, and on one of them, I'm going to actually cut it down a little bit. I'm going to be using my miter shears. I love this tool. These are great. My favorite crafting tools are all linked down below this video. You can use this to cut things at an angle or straight, and it will cut like through dowels and things like that. And it works great for cutting this. I just want to cut this down to make it shorter because I want my 2 trees to be 2 different heights. On the other tree, I'm only going to cut off just a teeny tiny amount at the very bottom, just because it is at an angle and I want it to be straight across so that it is flat for gluing to my project. I'm also going to add one of these Let It Snow wood words from Dollar Tree to my project, and so I'm going to be painting that white. And instead of using that paint from Dollar Tree, I decided to use an acrylic paint marker that I had from Arteza. So I let that dry, and then I decided to add some of this sparkle glaze just to the little snowflake on here, just to make it stand out a little bit more. And so this sparkle glaze you can get at any craft store, and I've probably had this bottle for like 10 years and it's still half full. It's not dried out. It works great. So it's worth the investment. I've used it a lot because just a little goes a long way, but it adds just a little bit more of an accent, and just kind of elevates the project a little bit. The tree ornaments have a little hole in the top so that you can hang them. However, I don't want to have a hole in the top for this project, so I am going to just put a little bit of hot glue inside that hole, and I'm putting on a metal ruler because when the hot glue goes through, then once it sets up, it just pops right off of that ruler, whereas if you did it on your table, it would pretty much just be stuck to your table. And so you could use wood filler for this, but I wanted something that would dry quickly, so I'm using hot glue. Once the hot glue is set up, I'm going to paint that with some white paint so it blends in with the tree. And then because these trees already have kind of a glitter on them, I'm going to add a little bit of the sparkle glaze over the top where I painted those holes, and that will just make it blend in and you won't even notice it. Now I'm going to attach my trees to my project, and because the only point of contact is that very bottom of the trunk of the tree, I'm going to use some E6000 on that very bottom, and then I am going to kind of go around the base of the tree using my hot glue, and this is going to help hold it on while that E6000 sets up. It will make kind of a little mound around the tree, but we're going to paint that, and it will just kind of disappear. So once the hot glue is completely set up on this taller tree that I put towards the back, I'm going to go ahead and paint that using my white paint. And again, I put a couple of coats on this to cover it up. I just thought it would be easier to paint this before I put the second tree on. Then I'm going to go ahead and add the second tree, the shorter one. I'm going to put it on the same way. I'm going to put it a little bit further forward and more toward the center. And I have to say, I'm really loving how these white trees just pop against that blue background. So now I'm going to add some sparkle glaze to the white shelf part so that this all looks like fallen snow. I want it to kind of match the trees with that sparkle on it. And so I'm going to just add a couple coats of the sparkle glaze, and I'm also making sure that I get it on the hot glue that is around the tree trunks as well. And to finish it off, I'm going to use some hot glue and glue on the Let It Snow. This is really pretty just like this, but look how amazing it looks with this LED candle that I picked up at Hobby Lobby. I just love this so much. Next, I'm going to show you how to make these faux birch logs that look so realistic. For this project, I will be using one pool noodle from Dollar Tree, as well as one roll of the adhesive contact paper. This pattern is called Marble Coffee. I'll also be using several pieces of pine branches and some of these wood stems from Dollar Tree, as well as some wide wired ribbon, and you can pick this up at Dollar Tree or any craft store. I'm going to be using some off-white chalk paint, and I'm going to be using some antique wax. Brown acrylic paint would work also. I'm going to measure and cut my pool noodle in three 16-inch sections, and a razor knife works really well to cut these. So I'll cut my pool noodle into three sections, and I'll have just a little piece left over. Next, I want to fill in the holes in the ends of my pool noodles, and I noticed that these little wood stems were just about the right size to fit in those holes. So I have these on hand. I'm going to use those and just hot glue those inside the pool noodle. You could just probably um, put some paper towel or some aluminum foil or something inside here. It's not going to show. I just wanted it to be a little more solid on the ends of the pool noodles instead of a hole in the end. And since I didn't want to have any indention there, I'm just adding some hot glue over the top of my wood piece. Then I'm going to use a metal ruler just to press down on this so it will make it nice and flat. And I'm using a metal ruler because once the glue is set, the metal ruler just pops right off, and then you have a nice smooth surface. And I'm going to do this on all of the ends of my three pool noodle pieces. Next, I'm going to take my roll of contact paper and I'm going to trace around the end of my pool noodle. And I actually should have moved this out from the edge a little bit further because I wanted about an inch border around that. And you can see here I did draw out around it about an inch, and I'm going to cut out that circle. And then I'm going to make some cuts from the outside of my circle to that inner line of the size of my end of my pool noodle. And then I'm going to peel off the backing and stick this on to the end of the pool noodle, and I'll fold down each of those little tabs over the end just pressing them down tightly, and this is how I'm going to cover the ends of my little logs. And I'm going to repeat this on all of the ends of my 3 pool noodle pieces. Then I'm going to cut a piece of contact paper that is the same length as my pool noodle and long enough to, or wide enough to go all the way around the pool noodle. And then I will just basically wrap my pool noodle in this so that it is covered completely with the contact paper. And yep, you guessed it. I'm going to wrap the other 2 pieces of my pool noodle in the contact paper as well. Okay, here's where the fun starts. We are going to transform these into some birch logs. So I'm going to take my off-white colored chalk paint and this kind of bristly brush from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to put a heavy, heavy dry brush coat on this, and I'm going to leave sections of the contact paper showing through, especially where some of those darker places are. I want to see those darker places come through as well. And you definitely want the brush strokes to show on this. And as you can see, it's already starting to look more like a birch log. I'm not going to paint it all the way down to the end because I am going to use a clamp and clamp that to the unpainted section at the bottom. And that way I can just stand it up to dry. Then once the paint is dry on the other section, I can paint that little bit on the end. And then I'm also going to kind of in a circular motion do some heavy dry brushing on the ends of the pool noodles as well. I'm going to start adding some details using my brown antique wax, or like I said, you can use some just acrylic craft paint. And I'm using a little small, thin liner brush, and I'm going to just put some small lines in a circular motion around the ends of my logs so it looks kind of like the cut end would look. Then I'm going to use a little bit more of a fluffier brush and the same paint and just darken it around the edge so it looks kind of like the bark and it just gives it a little bit more dimension. Then I'm going to take my large brush and add a little bit more paint, and I'm going to do some more dry brushing all over the log in just random places. And this is just going to be kind of messy looking, which is okay because tree bark is kind of messy looking. And I would just suggest that you go fairly light on this. You can always add more, but it's a little harder to lighten it up if you get it too dark. So uh, I'm going to finish that on all of my logs. And then I'm going to take my small liner brush and I'm going to add just some small little lines randomly all along my log as well. And once again, just start with a few of the little marks and then add more as you go until you like the way it looks. And then once all 3 of my logs were finished and the paint was completely dry, I did give them all a coat of this matte finish spray. And when my sealer is completely dry, I'm going to stack the 3 logs together, kind of offset, and then I'm going to take my wired ribbon and wrap that around my little bundle and hot glue that to secure the logs together. And I'm going to take my same ribbon and I'm going to tie a bow. And I think I'm just going to do a single bow, just something simple because I kind of feel like the logs are the star of this show. And so I just wanted a simple bow to go on the top. I'm using a zip tie to secure my bow, but you could use wire or twine. I just happen to have a zip tie handy, so that's what I used. And then I'm taking a small piece of my ribbon to put over the center of my bow and cover up that zip tie. Then I'll just attach my bow to the top of my little bundle of logs. And then I'm going to take a few pieces of that pine greenery, just tuck them under the bow. And I had thought about using some berries or something, but I really kind of liked the look of just the greenery. And then I used the one with the little pine cone in the center. And I really like how this turned out.
For this project, I will be using this silver tray that I picked up at Dollar Tree, along with these metal storage containers. These are from the Crafter Square aisle. They come two to a package, and I will be using 3 of these containers. I will be using these 3 votive candle holders that I found at Dollar Tree. I think these are stunning, but you can use any candle holders that you have that are about this size. I will also be using a 3/8 inch dowel. I just picked this one up at Walmart. This is a piece that I had left over, and it needs to be at least 14 inches long. Some other supplies I will be using are some metallic silver craft paint, some E6000 glue, as well as some hot glue. I'm going to start by cutting down my dowel to the size pieces that I need, and you do want to make sure that your dowel is straight. I noticed this one's got a little bit of a bend to it, so I'm going to cut it so that I'm hopefully getting the straightest pieces possible. But I'm going to cut one piece that is 6 inches long and 2 pieces that are 4 inches long. Now that I have my dowels cut down to size, I am going to take a little bit of sandpaper and just clean up those edges a little bit, but you do want to make sure that you don't sand off too much to make it not a straight edge anymore, because it is easy to sand it and get kind of an angle. Next, I'm going to take my metallic silver paint, and I am going to give these dowels a couple coats of this. I think it took about 3 coats to cover these, so it had a nice, good solid silver finish. Next, I'm going to find the center point of my tray, and I'm just going to mark with my pencil a couple of marks along the center just for reference. Then along that center line, I am going to be marking the center of the tray. On mine, it was about 6 inches to the center, so I'm going to be putting a mark there. And then I'm going to measure in from each edge of the tray 2.5 inches and put a mark there as well. So now I'm going to take my little storage containers and I am going to remove the lids. I'm just going to be using the lids of 3 of these containers. The lids are just a little bit shallower and are going to work better for this project. So I need to find the exact center of my lids, and so this is the trick that I use to do that. So I turn my lid upside down on a piece of paper and trace around it, and then I'm just going to cut out that circle, and then I will fold it in half and in half again so that I have like a quarter of the circle. Then I'm just going to line up that rounded edge along the edge of my lid, and I'm going to mark where the center point is, and I'm going to do that on all 3 of the lids. Now that I have those marked, I'm going to use some E6000 and just a little bit of hot glue to glue these dowels to the lids. Now, I did find that the super glue from Dollar Tree worked really well for this too, and so that's a good option. And I actually think it might give a stronger bond than doing it with the E6000 and hot glue. So if I were to do this again, I think I would just use the super glue. You do have to hold it for a little bit longer to get it to set up. Since I used the E6000, I did leave mine overnight to set up, but you could do a much shorter time with the super glue. Once those are all set, then it's time to attach them to our tray. And again, I used the E6000 and the hot glue because I hadn't really thought of using the super glue before I did this. That was kind of an afterthought. So like I said, if I did this again, I think I would just use the super glue. But I went ahead and put a little bit of E6000 on this, and then to get it to stand up, while the E6000 was drying, I did put just a little drop of hot glue on it as well. And as you can see here, I put the taller one in the center with the two shorter ones on each side. So once again, I let mine set up overnight, and then it's just time to style it. And this is so versatile. You can style this so many different ways, which is one reason I love it so much. So I put on some greenery that I had, and then I have these three little votive candles, like I said, that I found at Dollar Tree. And I just put the little LED tea lights inside those. And I just think that is so pretty. I love the way this looks. And this is great just for winter. It doesn't have anything really Christmassy on it, but you could also add like some Christmas ornaments in with that greenery, and that would be really pretty too. So for a little bit different winter look, you could remove the greenery and then replace it with some of the faux snow that you can get at craft stores or Dollar Tree or even Walmart. And I'm just going to spread that around all on the bottom of the tray. And then I'm going to use some of this really pretty greenery with the white berries that's new from Dollar Tree. It has a silver glitter on it, so it's perfect for this. And I'm just using one stem of this, but you could use a couple for a fuller look. And I just think that's really pretty. But then you could even add in some ornaments or snowflakes. Like I have these snowflake ornaments from Dollar Tree that I'm going to add in as well. And I think that just is a really pretty look.
So if you have the time and some scraps of wood or even like foam board from Dollar Tree, you could make this sign. However, I picked this one up at Hobby Lobby and the regular price was $14.99, but I got it half price. So $7.50 plus tax, and it is all ready to go. All I need to do is add my embellishments, and I'm going to show you how quick and easy it is to do with the Cricut. For this project, I am going to use a pre-made design that is already in Cricut Design Space. I'm going to search Farmhouse Winter and see what kinds of things come up. And I love this first one that comes up is perfect, but as you can see, there are lots of different designs to choose from. And so I'm going to go ahead and select that first one and add that to my project, and I'm going to then size it to the size that I need it to be. And I love how it has the measurements along the top and the side, so I can see exactly how big this is going to be when it cuts out. Now I'm going to stick my vinyl onto my project. So I'm going to just position the transfer tape where I want it and then press it down and go over it several times using the scraper tool. And once that is stuck down well, I'm going to slowly remove my transfer tape, and it just pulled off so easily and left my design on my project, and it looks amazing. Next, I'm going to create a little wreath using this wired jute and also a little piece of black and white checked ribbon and a couple of these holiday picks that I picked up at Walmart for just 98 cents each. So I picked up this wired jute at Dollar Tree, and I am just going to form a circle in the size of wreath that I want. Then I'm going to go around a couple of times and twist it together just to give it a little bit more thickness. If you're not able to find the wired jute, you could just use wire for this. It's just to form the shape of the wreath and to give a base to attach the greenery to. And I did use a little bit of hot glue just to secure the ends of this together so that it wouldn't come apart. Next, I'm going to take my greenery picks and I'm going to pull the branches apart, and then I'm going to start forming them around the wreath, and I will use some of this floral wire that I picked up at Dollar Tree to wrap around it to hold it all together. Once my greenery is all on, I am just going to add in the berries that were on those picks, and I'll attach these using a little bit of hot glue. Now I'm going to use my black and white checked ribbon to attach my wreath to my frame. So I'm going to figure out where the center of my frame is, and then I am going to hot glue one end of my ribbon on the top in the center, and then I'll loop it through my wreath and adjust the length so that my wreath is hanging right where I want it, and then I will glue the other end down and trim off the excess ribbon. I love how easy this project was, and I think it looks very high-end. I love that it is Farmhouse and it's for winter, not just Christmas, and I couldn't be happier with this project. For my next project, I will be making this lighted Christmas glass block, and I think these are so fun for the holidays. I'm actually going to be using a design that I purchased on Etsy and then uploaded into Cricut Design Space. And this design has 3 different colors, and so as I go to cut this, the Cricut Design Space is just going to walk me through the steps for changing my color of vinyl and cutting each of them out. And I love how simple this is and how it just walks you through each step. So I'm going to trim down my designs, and I am going to save the extra scraps because I can use those to cut out small things using a mat as well. For my glass block, I am using this 5.5-inch square block that I picked up at Hobby Lobby. The regular price is $9.99. Again, I got it 50% off, so I paid just $5 for this. And they do have them in a larger size. I believe they're 8 by 8. And then they have some different shapes, rectangular shapes and things as well. So I'm just going to remove the sticker, and then I am going to make sure it's all nice and clean and wipe it with some rubbing alcohol just to make sure there's no grease or anything on there. And these blocks from the craft stores have these little plugs in the bottom where you can put the lights in. If you pick up a glass block from a home improvement store, they are not probably going to have that. Now I'm going to start adding my vinyl design, and I'm going to put the larger black design on first. This is my main seine, and so this will be easiest to position. So I'm going to pull it off of the transfer tape, making sure that I get all of the design, and then I'm going to position it on the front of my block and go over it with my scraper tool and then peel off that transfer tape. And now I'm going to add in my other colors to complete this design. Now this is cute even just this way, but I am going to actually frost my glass with this frosted glass paint from Rust-Oleum. I picked that up at Walmart. I believe it was about $5. And I am going to spray right over the top of my vinyl. It won't change the color of the vinyl, but I just found it easiest to do this way, and I'm going to give this block about 3 light coats of this, letting it dry thoroughly in between each coat. And I forgot to show it on camera, but you do want to spray this with a sealer after the frosted glass paint is dry. Otherwise, that frosted glass paint wants to scratch off sometimes. So just to make it so it stays on, I would recommend giving it a coat or two of clear sealer. Next, I'm going to take some buffalo check ribbon. This is wired ribbon, and it's wide, and so I didn't want it quite this wide, so I'm just going to fold it in half, secure it with a little hot glue, and then I am going to put some hot glue on the bottom and attach it all the way around the side of the glass block, everywhere except where that hole is in the bottom where I'm going to put my lights. Then I'm going to use the same ribbon and make a bow to put on the top of my block. To secure the bow, I'm going to use a small zip tie from Dollar Tree and just put that through the center and cinch it up tight. And then I'm going to use some hot glue and attach that to the top of the block. The last step is to add some lights. I am just using a string of 20 lights from Dollar Tree. I picked this up last year and just had it in my stash, and so I'm just going to put those up inside the glass block, and they kind of just hold themselves in place pretty well. And then I'll thread the cord through the little hole in the plug that goes in the bottom. And I like these because you don't have to use batteries and you can just plug it in. I think these would make great Christmas gifts. They are quick to make and pretty budget friendly too. For this next project, I will be making this canvas wall hanging using the iron-on vinyl. And I really like the versatility in Cricut Design Space of being able to take designs and put them together to make a new design. And so that's what I did for this one. I found this little nativity and added it, and then I went and found the other elements that I wanted to add to this. So I want to put a star and some other animals, and then the words "Oh Holy Night." And so I just played around with this, adding in the designs that I wanted and resizing them, and it's just really easy to manipulate. So now I have all of my design elements in here, and I changed the color of my star to yellow so that I would have two different colors. And then I am going to select everything that's black, and I'm going to group that together and attach it so that it all cuts in the layout that it is in. So now I'm going to weed my design and get it all ready to iron onto my canvas. And once the designs are weeded, there's no need to use transfer tape with the iron on because it basically comes with its own transfer tape. So I picked up this canvas wall hanging at Hobby Lobby, and you could make this using a canvas bag from Dollar Tree and some paint stir sticks or wooden rulers, but if you're pressed for time, this is a great option. Regular price was $9.99. Again, I got it 50% off, so I just paid $5. To iron my design on the canvas, I'm going to be using the Cricut Easy Press, and so I have set it at 315 degrees, which is what the instructions for this iron on vinyl say. And then I've put the heat pad underneath and then warmed up the material a little bit. And then I'm just placing my design and sticking it down onto the canvas. Once I have that where I am happy with it, I'm going to add some parchment paper over the top of it, and then I am going to press it for 30 seconds. And because this design is larger, I'm going to do it in a couple of settings. I love how you can set the temperature on the Easy Press, and then it has the timer, and you don't have to guess how long it's been. And I still found myself counting like a creature of habit, but I think I'll get used to not having to do that. Once I have my main part of the design stuck down, then I'm going to go ahead and add my star and iron that down as well. Then I'm going to let that all cool completely, and then I'll just peel off that top plastic layer, and my design is stuck down to the canvas. Next, I'm going to take several sprigs of that greenery that I used in that first project, and I am going to use a zip tie to tie it together in the center, and then I'm going to wrap some of the black and white checked ribbon around it and secure it with hot glue. Then I will just attach that to the top center using some hot glue, and then I'm also going to add in some of those berries as well on both sides of the little ribbon that I wrapped around the center. This is a $3 lantern from Dollar Tree, and they are just a little bit over 10 inches, so it's still a really good size. And I'm going to be spraying it with some Rust-Oleum satin finished paint. This is made for metal and plastic. I'll also be using some thicker jute twine, a few pine branches that I just had in my stash, and also this little wood ornament that came out of a package from Dollar Tree. And I'll be using some antique wax. You could also just use some brown paint and, of course, an LED candle. The first thing I'm going to do is spray my lantern with my spray paint. And you do want to make sure you have a paint that bonds to metal because it's just going to keep it from peeling off. And I did do several light coats of paint to get this fully covered. I think it actually took about 3 coats. And then I let that completely dry. And then I took my antique wax and a dry brush and just brushed some of that lightly on just to kind of distress it a little bit and give it some definition along the edges. I'm also going to use the same brown antique wax on my little wood ornament, and I'm going to lightly brush over it. I still want the natural wood to show through, but I do want to darken it up, and this really makes the edges of this tree pop. Next, I'm going to take my jute twine and I'm going to tack it down with some hot glue. And you might want to use a little bit of E6000 or something as well to really help that stay. But I'm wrapping the twine really tightly so that it will stay in place. And I'm just wrapping it really randomly around the lantern. And you can do as little or as much as you like, but when it gets to a point where you like the way it looks, just tack down the other end with some glue and trim off the excess. Now I'm going to take my little ornament and just tie that using the jute twine hanger that came with it and tie it around the top of the lantern, and it just coordinates really well. And because I made it a little bit darker, it really stands out against that white lantern or that off-white lantern. Then I'm going to take a couple small pieces of my pine branches and just hot glue that to the back of the little tree. And that's all I'm going to do to embellish this. You could add some berries or a little pine cone or something, but I like the simplicity of this. You will want to use a smaller LED candle for this because you kind of have to slip it in between the jute twine, but it's not too hard to do. And then once I have that candle in place and have the lantern sitting up, I'm just going to place a few more of those pine branches inside the lantern around the candle. I love how this came out. It was easy to make, but I think it really has a high-end look. For this next project, I'm going to be using this Nativity 3D craft set from Dollar Tree. And I'm also going to be using one of these wall decor pieces from Dollar Tree. They carry these usually for all the different seasons, so it really doesn't matter what it says on it, we just need the shape. I'm going to also be using my linen white chalk paint as well as some black chalk paint and a little bit of my brown antique wax. And if you don't have the antique wax, you can just use a brown craft paint. For this project, I will be using all of the pieces that come in the little 3D Nativity craft kit. And I am going to take the base that these would fit down into, and I am going to be cutting it in half because I want to make a long strip to put my little pieces in. And even though my miter box is a little bit too narrow, I can still put this in at an angle and line up that center line with the guide for my saw and cut this in half. I love this miter box tool. It is such a wonderful thing to have for doing easy small projects like this. Then I'm going to sand my wood pieces, and I am also going to go over this little wood sign. Oh, it's not really wood, it's like MDF, but I'm going to go over this with my sandpaper just to rough it up because it's a pretty smooth surface and I want my paint to stick to it real well. So then I'm going to give it a coat or two or three or four, I think, of this linen white chalk paint. I'm also going to paint these two little base pieces that I just cut in half with the white chalk paint and just took a couple coats for that. And then I'm going to paint all of my other wood pieces using the black chalk paint. And I'm also going to paint the backs of all of these pieces as well because they will be able to be seen. So I just want the project to look nice and finished. I'm going to be gluing the manger on the back side of the stable piece and not actually pushing it down into the groove. And so I need to trim down the little part on the bottom of the manger that would normally have been pushed down into the groove. And so I'm just cutting this down using a ruler and an X-Acto knife and making it so that I can still glue it to the back of the stable and be able to push the stable piece down into the groove. Before I attach my nativity, I am going to go ahead and glue those little base pieces with the groove in them onto that bottom sign that I'm using as the main base. And I'm just measuring and making sure that I have everything centered. I'm making sure the groove is down the center of the main base piece. And then I'm going to just use my hot glue gun with some Gorilla Glue sticks and glue those down. And a little hack for you is if your hot glue sets up too quickly, you can use your heat tool to heat that up and reposition your piece. For my next step, I am going to add my words on the front of the base, and I found this font that I really liked, and so I just traced that out on a paper with some pencil, and then I'm going over the back with a lead pencil. And you know, this is totally old school, and my battery died and I missed this whole part, but I basically just took this, went over it on the backside with the pencil, and then I laid that on my project and traced my words so that it transferred to my project. And then I just used a Sharpie marker to write my words. So then, just to give it that old touch, I also added a little bit of that brown paint or antique wax on the front side of my sign around the edges just to give it an antiqued or worn look. And you'll notice that I did not do this along the top where that groove is because I kind of want that just to disappear. I don't want to highlight it. And now I'm going to add in my stable, and it's a little tight to get in there, so you just want to do this carefully so you don't break it, but I just pushed it down in there. And I am going to offset this. I don't want to center the stable because I'm going to put the wise men over on the right hand side. So I'm just going to press that down in, and I didn't glue this or anything. It was plenty tight just to hold it in there. Then I'm going to take my little manger and I'm going to glue that on the back side of the stable. I'm going to add Mary on the right side and I'm going to glue her on the front. So this is kind of going to give it a little bit of dimension. And so just a little bit of hot glue on the edge there. And I'm going to place her on the right side and I'm going to place Joseph on the left. Then I'm going to take those wise men and put them on the right side of the stable. And they did fit a little looser in that groove, so I did decide to add just a little bit of hot glue on the bottom to hold them in. And that's all I'm going to do with this project. I really like how simple and clean it looks, and it's just a really pretty nativity decor piece. For For this project, I am using a thrifted frame, and I got this for $5.99. It was originally $25 at Hobby Lobby, and you could use basically any picture frame for this, or even like maybe a canvas or something. Just for reference, this one that I got and I'm using is a little bit less than 16 the long way, 16 inches, and a little bit less than 12 inches in width. I'm also going to be using 5 of these little wooden trees that I picked up at Dollar Tree, I believe last year, but I think they still have them. They're little just unfinished wood ornaments. And then I'm going to be using 6 of these wood beads, as well as a little bit of jute twine. I am going to be using some words that I made on my Cricut machine, and I'm going to be using some red and some green paint. I'm guessing that someone added some twine to this to use in their wedding so they could braid the cords together. It was just attached with some Scotch tape, so I'm going to remove that. And then I'm also going to try and remove the verse on this, even though it's a great verse. I'm trying to make this completely black, so I am going to use some acetone to try and remove this. And typically this works like with Dollar Tree things, but this did not work at all on this. It didn't even lighten it or anything, and I was using 100% acetone on this, so this was my first challenge. It's like, okay, this is not coming off, so now what am I going to do? So I decided let's take some black chalk paint and just paint over the top of it. And the black chalk paint painted over this beautifully, but here's the mistake I made. I should have sanded this surface because it was too smooth, and as you will see coming up, the paint did not stick to this at all. But while that paint was drying, I moved on, and I took my trees and my green paint, and I'm just going to paint both sides of 5 of these little wooden tree ornaments with the green paint. So not only was I having trouble with this DIY, I was also having trouble with my camera, and it didn't record. I don't know if I didn't push the button or if it just didn't record, but I did put some matte finish Mod Podge over the paint once it was dry to give it more of a just a finished looking surface. And so then I am taking my jute twine and I am putting my beads, which I painted red, on this, and I'm not going to thread the trees onto the twine because then they would not lay flat. I'm going to actually just glue them onto the twine. So I'm going to tie a knot on one end and just glue that up in one corner. And then I'm going to kind of figure out how long I need this to be, for how long I want my little garland to hang down, and just tie another knot and glue that in the other corner. So the beads fit tight enough on this twine that I think they're going to stay in place. So I'm not adding any glue to keep them in place, but then I am going to kind of space my trees evenly. And then I am going to put on the word Christmas that I cut out on my Cricut machine. And here's where everything went south.
Oh no! Oh, this is turning into a disaster.
And so here we are again, back at square one. I decided then to take a piece of black foam core board that I cut to size and just glue it over the top. And I think that was a good solution. I am going to test putting a little bit of the matte finish Mod Podge on the foam core board to see what it does with that. See, I was smart. I tested it on a scrap piece first, and I did like the way that it made it look, and it didn't bubble or anything. So I went ahead and gave my foam core board a coat of the matte finish Mod Podge, and I really liked how that made it look. It just made it look more like the surface I was wanting instead of just a piece of foam core board. So I have to apologize because once again I didn't have footage of me putting the Christmas word on again, but as you can see it worked fine, and now I'm going to go ahead and put my letters onto my trees. And so obviously this is going to spell out the word Merry, and I really like how these letters, because they are black, it actually kind of looks like the letters are cut out once you get the trees on that black background. And so I really, really liked how that came out. And this was why I didn't glue my trees onto the twine yet, because I wanted to put these letters on before gluing them on. I just knew it would be easier. And now I'm going to go ahead and reattach my twine to the corners, the top corners, and then I'm going to add my trees in. And I want to make sure that that center tree is centered in the middle, so I am using my ruler to make sure that that happens. And then I'm going to just space these out. These trees were big enough that basically I didn't really have any wiggle room. The trees on the side ended up right up against the side of the frame, so it was pretty easy to space them. And you do want to make sure you kind of hold this up, the twine up away from the black part, so that your hot glue doesn't stick your trees down to it, because you want your garland just to be kind of like free flowing. You don't want it to be glued to the background. This next project I am going to make using a string of these wire LED lights from Dollar Tree. I'll also be using a package of these miniature glass containers that have the cork stoppers in the top. There are 7 in this package. And these are kind of a medium size, I would say. I think they do have some smaller ones and possibly some larger ones as well, but here you can see more of what the size is. I am going to be using a few pieces of these miniature pine picks from Dollar Tree. You just want some that are really thin that can go inside those bottles. And then I'll be using just a few little berries off of just some sprigs that I had. And I'll be using some Epsom salt, which you can get at Dollar Tree as well. So I started by laying out my bottles and my lights and kind of figuring out where I wanted to place my bottles. And it came out so that if I put a bottle on every other light, it was perfect. So I am going to put some Epsom salt inside my little containers, and then I'm going to put just a little sprig of greenery and a few little berries inside, and it just looks so cute. This, I feel like I got a little bit too much salt in, so I shook a little bit out, but it is helpful to have just a little tool that you can kind of push things down inside the bottle with, but I'm just going to repeat this with all 7 bottles, adding the Epsom salt, a little piece of greenery, and a few berries. Once I'm happy with how my bottles look, I'm going to attach them to the string of lights. So I'm going to skip the first light that's closest to the battery pack, and then I'm going to just fold over the wire so that I can push that little light, that second light, into the bottle. Fold the wires kind of down around the bottle and hold it. And then this does take a little dexterity, but I'm going to add a tiny drop of hot glue to the bottom of that cork and then just push that down into the bottle to hold the light in and hold the wire and everything, make it all secure. And it just looks so pretty with that light illuminating the bottle. Then I'm just going to repeat this, adding a bottle to every other light. And just look how sweet these are. I hope you enjoyed these Christmas DIYs. Let me know in the comments which was your favorite. And if you did enjoy this video and these projects, please hit that like button. It really helps my channel and helps other people to see this video as well. Also, if you haven't subscribed, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything, but it really helps me out. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a blessed day and a Merry Christmas.